supporters of President Trump think he's part of a conspiracy to cover up a global sex ring, and when lawmakers are passing legislation to claw back billions and upend the rule of law, and more. Opening today's show, how you're balancing the state of the world with the state of your summer downtime. Are you unplugging or tuning in? Call or text.
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Margery Egan. Then it's Amherst College professor Ilan Stavans on how both immigrant and non-immigrant Hispanic communities are changing how they live their lives in Trump's America. Plus, a conservative community in Oregon gets exactly what they voted for. It's all ahead on the 11 o'clock hour of BPR on GBH and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. State lawmakers in Texas begin a special session today that is set to produce a controversial new map of congressional voting districts. NPR's Shirley Leung reports Texas is one of multiple states that may end up holding next year's midterm election using new voting maps.
Redistricting is usually a once-a-decade process after a census. But 4 years after the release of the results from the 2020 head count, Republican Governor Greg Abbott has called a special session of the Republican-controlled legislature to redraw Texas's congressional map with the support of President Trump.
Just a very simple redrawing. We pick up 5 seats.
There are a handful of other states in the South, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, North and South Carolina, plus Utah and Wisconsin that may end up with new congressional maps soon through lawsuits. And Ohio has to redistrict for its seats in the U.S. House because of a state law. With a narrowly divided Congress, it all means that any changes with voting districts could make a big difference in whether Republicans keep control of the House or lose it to the Democrats. Shirley Leung, NPR News.
Iran is expected to hold talks this week with Germany, France, and Great Britain about its nuclear program. In Berlin, Esme Nicholson reports the U.S.'s allies are attempting to prevent Iran from enriching uranium and developing a nuclear weapon.
Iran's foreign ministry has confirmed that its deputy foreign minister will meet his British, French and German counterparts in Istanbul later this week. Germany, Britain and France have warned Tehran that failure to resume negotiations with the United States before the end of August would result in fresh international sanctions. Germany's foreign ministry spokesperson Martin Gieser says finding a diplomatic solution is paramount and is being coordinated with the United States. Washington and Tehran had been holding talks until Israeli and American airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities last month. Tehran denies that these facilities are being used to develop nuclear weapons. For NPR News, I'm Esme Nicholson in Berlin.
At least 19 lives are lost after a Bangladesh Air Force training jet crashed into a school and college campus in the capital, Dhaka. More than 50 other people, including children, are being treated for burns. Here's Shamim Chowdhury.
The aircraft was a Bangladesh Air Force F-7 used to train military pilots. It went down early in the afternoon in the northern district of Uttara, hitting buildings on the Milestone College campus. Footage from the scene showed flames and thick smoke rising as bystanders scream and cry. The jet appeared to slam into the side of a building, sparking a massive fire. Firefighters worked to douse the blaze. Bangladesh's interim leader Muhammad Yunus has promised a full investigation and support for the victims' families. The government has declared a national day of mourning on Tuesday. For NPR News, I'm Shamim Chowdhury in Bangladesh.
This is NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Recent filings from the MBTA shows more than 100 T employees made over $100,000 in overtime in 2024. Herald reports that of the nearly $880 million paid to more than 10,000 employees last year, over 14% came in the form of overtime at the MBTA. From the start of this year until the end of June, the track record shows that the T is on track, no pun intended, to arrive, no pun intended, at around the same overtime figure for this year, 2025. A Nantucket man is due in court on felony charges that he cut down his neighbor's trees for a better ocean view. Nantucket Current and Enquirer and Mirror report that 56-year-old Jonathan Jacoby cleared a stand of 50-year-old trees in order to create an ocean view for himself from his house next door. He then subsequently listed his property for sale for nearly $10 million while touting its sweeping ocean views in the real estate description. Property owner Patricia Belford is suing Jacoby over the tree cutting and is asking for $1.4 million in damages. Jacoby's former landscaper says he admits to the incident. In an email to the Boston Globe, Jacoby stated, quoting here, "I wasn't trespassing, I was clearing out her crappy trees." He's due in court September 15th. Red Sox open a series with the Phillies in Philadelphia tonight. We're looking at a sunny day today, high about 80, 73 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Welcome to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm the Boston Globe's Shirley Leung, in for Jim Browdy.
And I'm former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral. I'm in for Margery Egan. They'll be back at the BPL tomorrow, joined by 3 suspended Market Basket executives who were removed at the same time as beloved CEO RDT, plus CNN's John King and more. Hello, Monday. Hello, Shirley. I was going to say happy Monday, Shirley. Hello, Shirley. Happy Monday, Shirley. Hello.
Hi, Andrea. The estrogen surge returns every Monday, right? It seems like.
Yeah, it's becoming a habit.
So we'll start today, our Manic Monday. And we're going to check in on we're calling it a midsummer political check-in. I mean, are you taking the sunny summer months to completely unplug from politics? Or are you finding that increasingly impossible to do, given all of the news all of the time? Let's start with Jeffrey Epstein's. I mean, in his relationship with the president, it's dominating the media cycle, at least for now. There's a war in the Middle East, a complete abdication of Congress's power of the purse, rule of law. They just voted on a rescission package they didn't even read. And the Supreme Court rolls over almost daily. And then there's Maria Ressa. She's the Nobel Peace Prize winning journalist who took on an authoritarian regime in the Philippines. And she spoke with Jim and Margery in May. And we've got a little clip of this.
If the trends in America continue, the democracy here will die by the summer.
Yeah, you just subscribe to that yourself?
It depends on Americans. Mm-hmm. Actually, I've been really surprised by, the deer in headlights. When I listen to people say, well, we'll wait till the midterms. I was like, how do you know the midterms are even going to happen?
I was shocked when I heard her say that back in May. And we don't mean to run a stake through your summer relaxation right now, but how are you handling the constant flooded zone? I mean, tuning in, are you showing up, or are you burying your head in the Cape Cod sands until September? 877-301-8970, call or text.
Well, I have to say, I wasn't surprised by her saying it at all. I've actually been saying this for a really long time. We have to really be focused on the fact that Republicans do not intend, the powers behind Project 2025 and this administration don't intend for us to ever have another free and fair election. I mean, people, it's really hard, especially in the summertime, to focus on these kinds of things. But I tell people to subscribe to Mark Elias's Substack and the Democracy Docket, because he keeps a running list. He's involved in many of the cases. But all across the country, Republicans are still pursuing the voter suppression cases and the voter suppression measures, both in the courts, overwhelmingly in the courts, and in the legislatures, and especially in the swing states, but in other states too, to make sure that as few people who disagree with them vote as possible. So it's sort of a real perversity that at a time when you're supposed to be able to slow down, take it easy, enjoy time with friends and family, go to the beach, have picnics. I don't think we have the luxury of not being tuned into this or tuned into what's going on around the world and figuring out how, if we disagree with it, we push back against it, because I think Maria is absolutely right that it won't be here by the summer. Thinking you can wait till the fall is insane.
Right. I mean, it seems like with every passing week, every passing month, the Trump administration has been quite effective in rolling back democracy, and it seems like I guess the strategy is that they're just going to make us exhausted, and we're all just going to throw up our hands.
It's very effective to do that, to make people so exhausted or disgusted. I mean, that played a huge role in 90 million people not voting, which would have been determinative in this election. That was a big part of it, was people either because they genuinely felt that way or through misinformation, disinformation, or just the flood of everything every day, and Trump running continuously from the time he left the White House till the next election. It was exhausting, and it still is exhausting. The issue is whether or not you have the luxury to be tired. And I think at this point, being tired and bowing out, if you want to save it, I think that is a luxury that we don't actually have.
I am heartened by the fact that there are a lot of citizens protesting, right?
Yes. Every day, certainly every week.
Right. And also, and I think this came up, I don't know if I heard this on the show on Friday, but, I experienced this when I was, of course, there's protests on the Common and here in Boston. But I was struck by when I was driving up to Montreal for my summer vacation a couple weeks ago, there were signs. There were no king signs in little towns in Vermont.
Yeah.
It wasn't just in the big cities. So there's a lot of people who are agitating and trying to do something.
I think what's lacking, and we'll probably talk a lot about this, especially in the coming weeks, is some sort of leadership. People, you have to organize that sentiment, right? So there has to be leadership, and we elect people. We have elected leaders that we depend on for that kind of leadership, and we haven't seen it. And the way that Democrats have seemed so stymied by all of this and unable, even after 4 years of Trump, it's not like he dropped out of the sky. There was 4 years of him still so unprepared for all of this, I think is also disheartening to a lot of people. But let's see what Nancy in Concord has to say. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, thank you very much for taking the call. I think it's crucial that we keep listening. The news about the Epstein case and Donald Trump's lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, nowhere in the media yet has it been mentioned that all of his legal expenses, and he's boasted that he has the largest legal team in the nation, all of those are going to be borne by taxpayers because the Wall Street Journal has libeled the president and inevitably, of course, slandered ultimately.
That's a really good point, Nancy.
I
didn't even think about that. That's outrageous.
It is. And I hadn't actually thought about whether or not libel or defamation of just has never sort of happened before. Right. I don't think we've ever had a president that sued anybody for that.
Right.
And well, every single one of his actions are actions of the president.
Right.
And that is brand new.
Right.
But we're going to be paying for that, and that could go on forever.
It is a really, really good point because you think of libel and defamation as very personal, very individual torts, right? Causes of action that inure to the individual. And you know him well enough to know that if he doesn't have to pay for something himself, he certainly would, try to use, I guess, the Justice Department. But that's essentially him saying that the American people believe that he's been libeled or defamed versus him believing it personally. So I'm not sure. This is unprecedented. I'm now going to have to look this up. Thanks, Nancy.
I want to look it up, too.
Yeah, I think it should be a personal cause of action that inures to him. He should have to pay for it himself.
Right, exactly.
It shouldn't be the United States of America that pays for that. But that was a very good point.
We've got some texts coming in from Anonymous. I'm so gobsmacked by the horror of what is happening to our country that I've started meditating every day and chanting a protection mantra to ward off evil. I don't know what else to do. I bet a lot of people are meditating.
Right. I think there's a level of self-medication, whether it is of the chemical kind or the spiritual kind, that is probably going on. We certainly are seeing a huge spike in mental health issues around the country. And the atmosphere has something to do with that. Lisa in Haverhill says the one thing we should not ignore is the growing outrageous acts of ICE, because that requires our protest. We're going to be talking a lot about that today, Lisa, with Ilan Stavans, who's our first guest. But yes, there's a lot for people to absorb there, but we need to absorb it and need to understand how we're being militarized and how ICE has become the best funded law enforcement agency in the United States of America. They got something like a $75 billion budget increase, tripled
overnight, thanks to the big, beautiful bill or mega bill. I don't know. What are we calling it now? I feel like I know it's officially called the big, beautiful bill, but
I call it something that begins with B, but it doesn't have anything to do with being big or beautiful.
All right, we have another call. Robert from Lowell.
Hi, Robert.
Hey, good morning. Nice to talk to both of you, and I hope Jim and Margery are having a restful day wherever they are. But,
I'm sure they are.
I do think it's like every day it's like something just that seems more and more ridiculous and so antithetical to, American life and thinking. And plus, I'm not a Harvard graduate, but I can't believe how he gets away with Harvard is just subject to harassment. And I don't even understand in a democracy how you can pick out one university and just go at it so relentlessly. It just amazes me. But and then my other point, which is more a little bit longer term, like before the midterms next year, we're supposed to be celebrating. I'm now going to say observing our 250th anniversary as a nation, and I think it's going to be a really, really difficult year. I feel as if I will want to be, on the street, not, protesting or trying to save what we have left of our democracy. But I think it's going to be a really tough year. I'm old enough to remember 1976, the bicentennial.
Me too.
And we had a Republican in office, Gerald Ford, I believe, and it was a great, wonderful year. But how is this country? What are we supposed to do next year? I'm really struggling with the whole thought of maybe I'll just get out of the country next summer. But it's just striking me. It's a really tough time we're in.
Well, hopefully, Robert, I agree with you completely. I just think it's, there's a lot more darkness before the dawn, assuming there is a dawn. But I think that one good thing might be that, celebrating the anniversary might galvanize people, because it might, it caused you to think back to, celebrating when Ford was president, the bicentennial rather. And, when people remember what we're supposed to be, sometimes that helps. Sometimes that helps break through some of the fog of what we currently are. So maybe that may be another galvanizing point for this country. But whatever is going to happen, better happen now.
Well, I think there will be a lot of protests. Didn't we experience that when we were at the start of the revolution? I think, when they gathered in Lexington and Concord back in April, I think there were also protests against a No Kings protest as well. I would sure hope that there are protests through our quote unquote celebratory year. But I think it's about, and this is, it's a reminder that our democracy is a living, right? It's a living, breathing document. It's not, and you have to kind of constantly feed it to, and it's not static,
right?
Right?
It doesn't just happen. And that's part of the issue here is that and people have texted and weighed in and talked about the complacency. You kind of, after a certain number of generations, you just kind of think, well, it'll always be this. Just like women used to say, well, there's no way that they'll ever overturn Roe versus Wade. You can never say never with any form of government, but democracy, which is the most fragile in particular.
And right now, the Republicans and supporters of Trump have the upper hand. They realize that. They realize that we can make this country into our mold or what we want it to be. We realize democracy is malleable, and now it's up to those who disagree with that to stand up and do something, even though they lost the presidential election. I mean, there's a lot we can do. That was a great call, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, a lot of people have it, and a lot of anonymous texters have come up with new names that we should use.
Oh, really?
For the big, beautiful bill.
Okay.
Big, ugly bill.
Yeah.
That's one. And then big bozo bill. And then, call it the awful, outrageous bill for billionaires. That's Catherine in Somerville's suggestion. I like that.
Well, listen, the people have not yet begun. We're just starting to absorb the impact of what's actually in this bill. And to the point Shirley made in the intro, most members of Congress didn't even bother to read it because they were just going to cede to the president anyway. But people are really going to feel this. When Robert says it's going to be a tough year, people are going to be absolutely shocked at the ways at which this affects them financially. And in many, many other ways, because they've timed it so that some of it will not happen until after the midterms, or much of it will not happen until after the midterms, and people won't feel it until it's time for them to feel it.
Let's hear from John from Westford.
Hi, John.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
I think the conservative movement, they have the same concerns about protecting democracy and having an open and fair election. It's the same worry. I'm conservative, and everything you're saying, I'll hear on the conservative side. And it seems like there's got to be a way to have it so every state does their election differently. And I know it's in the Constitution, but it creates such turmoil. I mean, the last election, we had votes counted for days on end, and ballot harvesting and all sorts of craziness. It's the same concern on the left and the right. That people, my view is you should be a registered voter, vote in your district, and make sure it's open and available to everybody. That's what people want. And if we went back to paper ballots, the way most of the world, Europe, has switched back to paper, and that way there's less confusion. We'll know at midnight. It's not going to be dragged out in the courts and go on and on, because every election, every midterm, it's going to be chaos. And I don't know.
Well, when you say go back to paper ballots, are you for or against mail-in voting and early voting? Because those are by paper too.
Yes, but I'm only for absentee ballots. Not when you go into districts, like key districts, and flood them with ballots, multiple ballots. I've got multiples in the mail. When there are areas that it just doesn't, there's definitely a ballot harvesting with the Zuckerbucks. That definitely took place.
And what's the proof of that?
Well, you have, like in certain key districts, the last election, Trump got more minority votes than any other Republican since 1960, except for in key districts of Philadelphia and certain areas where Biden got more than Barack Obama. When you look at it by demographic, you can tell, and those are the areas with the drop boxes and people ballot harvesting. It's you might not say it's evidence, it's anecdotal, but it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, John. What's your source for this? Where are you getting that information that there was absolutely ballot harvesting and that Trump's numbers were where did you get that? Where did you hear that?
It's proven that $500 million, $500 million
where?
By Zuckerberg. It was called Get Out the Vote. It's public knowledge. I mean, I can't give you can find it on any Fox News website or anywhere. Okay. You can find it. If you look up Zuckerbucks, if you look up Get Out the Vote, and then if you look at some of the drop boxes where there's video, you can see video of people stuffing them, taking photos, and getting paid for it. That's been proven too.
I don't think so.
It's a gotcha moment when show me the news source. Like, I can't say
it's not. I wasn't saying that as a gotcha moment. I'm saying that I tend to when you have when the head of the FBI talks about it being the freest and fairest election, possibly ever, and there's lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit alleging what you say happened, and in courts all across the country, it is disproven that has happened. I have trouble saying it's on the Fox News website and I should believe that versus all of the lawsuits that were brought alleging what you alleged and then were heard in courts where they said, no, that's exactly not what happened. None of that happened. 60 losses in court for Trump, and also the head of the FBI saying that the election was done freely and fairly. I just can't buy the ballot harvesting thing. But thank you for your call.
Hello?
Yeah. Thanks for your call, John. We're going to take a couple of our texters, okay? So a couple of our texters have been weighing in on a variety of things that they think are contributing to the fatigue. Yep, one of our anonymous texters says no taxes, no tips, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime. That's a play to keep common people who just don't pay attention to politics with their head in the sand. Just one of the tactics from the authoritarian playbook.
And I want to end on we have some fact checking about Zuckerberg.
Right.
And so the Facebook founder, it turns out he and his wife did collectively donate $400 million to two nonprofit organizations, but it did not donate to Biden's 2020 presidential campaign. So they did not violate campaign finance laws. But it's true they did give a lot of money to help elect Joe Biden.
But if you go to the Fox website, you'll see something different. More of your calls and texts after this break. I'm former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral. She's the Boston Globe's Shirley Leung, and we're in for Jim and Margery today. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
After years of progress, vaccine rates have stalled across the globe. In some places, they're in steep decline. One potential cause? The anti-vaccine movement in the U.S.
Now this is starting to contaminate low- and middle-income countries in Latin America, on the African continent, and elsewhere.
That story is next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Animation Block Party, dedicated to exhibiting independent, professional, and student-animated works for over 20 years. Presenting Animation for Kids Festival August 9th at the Simmons Theater at the New England Aquarium. Learn more at animationblock.com. And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village. Audiences can experience the lavish elegance and mystery of Anastasia the Musical, now playing. Tickets at capeplayhouse.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. I'm the Boston Globe's Shirley Leung. She's former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral. We're in for Jim and Margery today. They're back at the BBL tomorrow. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about your ability to enjoy the summer season while acknowledging the political chaos around you. Trump's second administration is fundamentally changing our system of government, how we're seen by others around the world, and so much more. Are you opting for a head-in-the-sand approach, at least until summer's over? Or are you taking the sunnier days in stride, using them to show up and stand up and organize? Give us a call or text us at 877-301-8970. Again, that's 877-301-8970.
And also, let us know how you feel about the influence of money in elections. I mean, our last caller was completely mistaken, apparently, about the Zuckerberg thing, but it is well documented. Elon Musk's $240 million contribution to get Trump elected is not only well documented, they both kind of brag about it. At least Musk is still bragging about it. How do you feel about it? Because we're going to talk about a little bit today, I think, about the poll that just came out, at least for the Boston mayoral race. Shows Michelle Wu, I think, 30 points ahead of Josh Kraft. And at least one of her commercials is about the amount of money that the PACs in support of him have raised, that they are donors affiliated with Trump. People exhausted by the influence of money and the fallout from Citizens United. So let us know if in your local elections you're seeing some monetary influences that you like or perhaps don't like. Let's go to Chris in Cambridge. Hi, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Andrea. Good morning, Shirley. I just wanted to say, to segue from that, local elections are really important for defending our values. Our municipal elections in Boston and Cambridge and Somerville, they're all in the odd years. So this is when the summer is when all the campaigns are kicking into high gear. So if you really value Mayor Wu standing up and defending our values on immigration and migrants and protecting our communities, keeping us safer as we move around the streets, doing things that you support. In Cambridge, for example, I work on advocacy around bike lanes. I really hope that people value that they show up for candidates that are doing those messages and supporting those missions. So I hope that people can take that energy that they have and that dread and put it to work this summer.
Chris, how long have you been involved politically?
I guess about 5 years.
Okay. I was just curious because it seems like we forget periodically that, the people who oftentimes the people who become our senators and our congressmen start off in local elections, right?
Right.
So getting involved at that level and picking the people who represent you at that level can have real big consequences down the line when they run for higher office.
So, Chris, what drew you into politics, or being politically active, I should say?
Two things. I really valued open space and safety, getting around and kind of peace of mind. So I got really involved in the Riverbend Park debate around Memorial Drive because I really enjoyed and appreciated the open space that we had on the weekends there for people of all ages and abilities to just have a place to stroll and be near the river. It just really was something that I was passionate about. And then I also I got hit by a car myself when I was biking, and there's nothing like making it serious and real to you when it happens to you. So I think it's a much bigger issue than bike lanes. It's about how safe it is and how comfortable and efficient it is for people to be able to move around their communities, to have options for getting, from point A to point B. So I just cared a lot about that. And it's been fun getting involved.
Well, I'm glad you're involved, and I hope you stay involved, Chris. And it was good advice for everybody to get involved at that local level, especially if you're frustrated at the federal level. Do what you can do, right?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your call.
We've got a good text from Joe from Ashford, Connecticut. We need to learn to stop giving Trump excess attention. That's what he craves and derives his power from. Start tagging all Trump's transgressions as GOP transgressions. Give consistent attention to the whole party's role in all the bad government we're witnessing.
And we have Philip in Coventry, Rhode Island, who says redistricting, when it doesn't usually happen, should be a big red flag. They're dismantling everything about our country, not even collecting data that we need to know about what is really going on in the economy and other areas. Epstein is a distraction, as are other hot news items. That's true. And Trump just sort of we're at this point now where the president of the United States just sort of blatantly calls for the state of Texas to redistrict its congressional districts so he can keep a majority in the House after the midterms, and it's sort of a collective shrug. So, yeah, keeping your eye on the ball about what's really important is a big deal.
We got another call. Can we take another call? We can take another call,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
How about Anne from Lincoln?
Hi, Anne. We only have a couple of minutes. Hi.
Oh, okay. I'll try and be quick. It took me about 3 days to get up the strength to watch the new Frontline piece about the legal system and Trump. And, oh, my goodness, it's just devastating. And that sounds strange, but I want to encourage everybody to try and watch it. I learned some new names and faces in this fight, people that have been advocates for this Unitarian executive idea for a long time.
Yeah.
And boy, are they scary people. And you cannot be complacent this summer. You have to understand what's really happening. I've been thinking Trump is just sort of a convenient front man for this thing, and all these other more serious entities are using him in a lot of ways. And we've got to be heads up about this. Is not just about Trump. There are some serious people underneath this that are very, very scary, and they want to turn this country into, Russia or what's the other one? Hungary.
Yeah, Hungary.
Any authoritarian country would do for him.
Right.
I mean, he's a fan of all the strongmen, and I couldn't agree with you more. I say it all the time. He's just the face on the Trojan horse. But the frontline piece that Anne's talking about is called Trump and the Rule of Law. In fact, the producer, or maybe the director, was on with Jim and Margery last week, so catch that if you can, Trump and the Rule of Law. Thank you so much for all of your calls and texts. Coming up, after this quick break, we're going to talk with Ilan Stavans, who's professor of humanities at Amherst College, about all the ways people of Hispanic and Latino origin, regardless of their immigration status, are changing their behavior in response to Trump's America. I'm Andrea Cabral. She's Shirley Leung. We're in for Jim and Margery. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM, and we're also streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on The Culture Show, Richard Russo. The writer is known for his novels, which have earned him a Pulitzer and an abundance of dedicated readers. Now, in a departure, he's published a collection of essays titled Life and Art, exploring the relationship between the two. That and more is on The Culture Show, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Cornerstone at Canton, an assisted living community with services designed to help seniors age in place, offering respite and trial stay options to help during recovery or when exploring new living arrangements. More at cornerstonecanton.com. And Subaru of New England. You can explore New England in the all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Forester Hybrid. Subaru retailer locations at subaruofnewengland.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Boston Globe columnist Shirley Leung. She's former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral. We're in for Jim Browdy and Margery Egan. They'll be back tomorrow and they'll be at the BPL. We're joined now on Zoom by Ilan Stavans, professor of humanities and Latin American and Latino culture at Amherst College. His latest book is Lamentations of Nezahualcóyotl and Nahuatl Poems. He's also the publisher of Restless Books, an independent nonprofit publisher devoted to championing essential voices from around the world. Hello, Professor.
Hello, how are you? So good to see you both.
Hi, Professor. You should be able to see me in a second. I don't have you on my screen, but hopefully you can still see me. So tell us, what is your word of the week and why?
The word of the week is assimilation. And this is an important word as we finish the first 6 or maybe 7 months of the Trump administration. The concept of, or the definition of assimilation is the process whereby an individual integrates into a society, but maybe also the other way around, vice versa, the way an individual changes society. There is no immigrant that doesn't affect the environment into which they arrive. And I think that what we are seeing is a strong resistance from this government in all kinds of ways to refuse the opportunity of immigrants to have their own culture, their own individuality, their own collective way to project itself into the landscape. There's a genuine fight against immigrants as if they were satanic forces undermining this society, which is a rather disgraceful moment for all of us.
Yeah, the administration has been using assimilation almost as a talisman, as though they can ward off the very impact that immigrants have always had, no matter what country they were in, and as though that is the thing that should be wanted. So tell us a little bit about, let's start with this English-only push, which despite all evidence to the contrary, well documented, the attempt to establish a national language does nothing to unify people. Tell us what the Trump administration is doing around this. Who is it affecting the most?
This is a country that has had its very intense conversation struggle with the concept of a national official language. There have been many states that have an official language unto themselves, but the country as a whole has not. And I think I say this with happiness, but the Trump administration has come in with a vengeance in this regard, proposing making English the official language of the country. This means that a country where literally every language of the world is spoken, in cities like New York alone, a microcosm of the world, you can find indigenous languages from Asia and from Latin America and from Africa, all over. And now there seems to be an allergy to them and to their continuity. What the Trump administration is doing is establishing that no official documents, nothing coming from the White House, nothing coming from Washington, should be in any language other than English, and in a very standardized, flat, unengaging English that doesn't show the beauty and the nuances of our language. It had during the Biden administration, during the Obama administration, Clinton, all kinds of venues for Chinese, for Arabic, mostly for Spanish. Spanish is the unofficial second language of this country. And this approach means that if you speak a second language and you are from the working class, not from the upper class or upper middle class, because you can still be rewarded as such for speaking Spanish or Mandarin or Arabic. But if you're from the working class, you are now in fear of using that language. The immigrants are afraid to syntonize the radio in a Spanish language station, fearing that ICE will stop them, and just by listening to that radio station will infer that they are, it's racial profiling or linguistic profiling. And this is what we have come to in this very troubled times.
I didn't know that English was not the official language. I actually thought it was. And so, but I can see why it can be so problematic. I mean, the first thing I thought about was, well, I'm sure the IRS will always have multiple languages, right? I feel like that's what's going to happen. There's certain areas they're going to, of course, they're going to buy by English only or try to, but in other areas they're going to, I can't imagine the IRS ever only doing English only, because won't the government want to collect as much money as possible, and communicate?
Well, to go after people, then it's okay to be multilingual,
right?
But, Ilan, to your point, I mean, that's kind of funny, Shirley, that you thought we have no national religion, no national language. That's the rule in a democracy. But Ilan, to your point, the places where multilingual. Where it's necessary to be multilingual around things like informing people about their rights or informing people about their health care or how they can vote. These are the crucial areas where government has been multilingual in the past in order to bring more people to the government. So can you talk a little bit about the method behind the madness in this, that it's not just as simple as saying, hey, go ahead, speak English, we're in America, that there's more to this than that.
The method behind the madness, or the method to the madness, that's a beautiful line from Hamlet. Yeah, the method here is, and maybe this anecdote, Andrea, will be useful. It has even established, the government of Trump has even established that if you are a trucker coming from Mexico to the United States, that is, you're Mexican, and you are carrying goods across the border, say from Tijuana to El Paso or to McAllen or wherever it is that you're going, you have to know now the basics of English. Otherwise, your life is going to be turned miserable. And that means that even on the other side, companies, in order to continue, in spite of the tariffs, in order to continue doing business with the United States, they are actually putting their truckers to classes in order to learn English. Now, I am all in favor of learning a second language and a third language and many languages. But when you make it an obligation that you cannot do business if you don't speak the English language, then I think it is, if it's not outright fascism, it verges with fascism.
Right.
And going, Shirley, to what you were saying, the amazing thing about the English language worldwide, is that unlike many other languages, it doesn't have an academy. And I'm here not talking about universities, but I'm talking about like the Royal Academy of the Spanish language or the Académie Française. It doesn't have an academy that legislates and protects and safeguards what the English language should be. It's a language by the people and for the people, and that the people use all the time. We are the legislators, and we're also the users of the language. And I find astonishing beauty in the fact that it is our language, and we'll do with it as we wish. And if we tomorrow want to stop using one word and want to adapt it into something different, it is up to us. But the Trump administration thinks that we should actually be much more mechanical, that it should come from Washington, what we say and what we don't say. As you have heard, Trump has even established that he wants some sports teams to change their names back to the Native American names that we thought we had already overcome. That we
have the Redskins, right?
The Redskins.
And withholding, threatening to withhold
racism.
football money, money for the stadium. It is.
They're not hiding it. It's just naked regression back to a more racist, more comfortable time for people. Also,
it's
like Donald Trump.
Control. It's about control.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely about control. And there's an essential contradiction in this vision and mission that Trump has. He thinks that we can go back to a past, that you're making America great again, as if in one particular period, English was spoken by everybody. There has never been a moment in American history where everybody only spoke English, and hopefully there will never be. This country has always been reinvigorated by immigrants and by people who speak other languages. That connects us to the rest of the world. We can't cut those ties.
Oh, I know this story upset me so much about this effort to stamp out other cultures and beginning with the language and I was quite upset about this story that we were reading about how there's so much. It seems like a lot of Latinos, immigrants concerned about ICE. I mean, they're hiding their culture. I mean, it's just not, it's the Spanish, not playing Spanish language music, not even driving for fear of being stopped by ICE.
Well, having someone who's a citizen or having a white person drive you to and from work so that the reason for the stop, that person can't be profiled, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then here locally, my colleague Marcela Garcia had a story about Latino festivals being canceled, because out of, some of it is money, money reason, but a lot of it is fear of they don't want to be the center of ICE raids, We
don't literally call it that way, but I think this is a war against Latino culture because Latino culture comes in varieties of Spanish, the Spanish of the Dominican Republic and of Puerto Rico and of Mexico and in Colombia and all these many other places. And one of the interesting moments that happened a week or two ago was when the new Superman movie in Hollywood came out, and the Republicans that the far right that aligns itself with Trump were against the representation of Clark Kent as an immigrant into this country. They hated that fact. Of course, of the many superheroes from the very beginning, Superman coming from Krypton is a newly arrived individual who changes his name the way many immigrants change their name. He is raised by Americans, who acquires a new identity in a farm. And it was done by Superman was created by two immigrants or children of immigrants coming from Canada, coming from Lithuania, Jews at the beginning of the 20th century. So it's a very sad moment that the history even of these pop icons can be contested as if this was shameful, when in fact superheroes are representations of who we are in one way or another.
And quite frankly, comic books have often led the way towards showing people what the harms of a lack of tolerance, or shows like The Twilight Zone have things that you wouldn't necessarily think have managed to get that message across in very subtle but very effective ways. So, Ilan, can you talk to us a little bit about the fact that ICE is now the best funded law enforcement agency in the country? It's the militarization of ICE, and it's sort of making it a national police force. And explain to people why that makes it such a fearsome force in this country, and draw the line between that and why people are hiding and why festivals are being canceled.
Absolutely.
How are they using these new resources?
Just as the education department is being erased, just as USAID is disappearing from the face of this country, the increase in that so-called beautiful bill of the money allocated by billions to ICE means that we are building the equivalent of concentration camps or of prisons, where those individuals who have been hard-working people that have in enormous ways helped our economy move forward are now being isolated, siloed from the rest of us and from their own family, and that it is ICE that is the one that is receiving the most dollars than it should be in science or education or in technology. A very sad moment. And this means that many Latinos are now absolutely fearful of coming across an ICE agent. In LA, not too long ago, when there were marches and protests, many Republicans complained that those that were speaking out used masks in order to hide their identity. Right. But ICE, wherever it shows up, uses this mask, and they never raise any question. All right, so if these are the police that is representing the United States, let them be seen just as any policeman should be seen, their face clear, and let them have cameras. We have gone already that, so that we know exactly what kind of arrests, what mistreatment is being done to these individuals that, again, did not come to this country just because they want to undermine the American civilization, but because America itself had an impact in Honduras, in Guatemala, in Latin America, in Africa, that pushed people north looking for better opportunities. The reasons for immigration are the same that connect with American foreign policy.
I mean, one of the things I had no idea that this. Okay, I guess we're supposed to also another way to call this bill, if we want to, we can call it the tax and spending bill.
It is a tax and spend bill.
I mean, I had no idea that that's where all the new money is coming from for ICE. I mean, Congress gave ICE $74 billion to spend by through 2029. It's more than tripling its current $8.7 billion annual budget. I think another statistics I've seen is that we now, the administration's goal of 1 million deportations, it's going to cost about $17 billion, repeated annually, presumably. And that's that amount of money. It's more than all 50 states spend together on pre-K. Isn't that crazy?
Right.
That's outrageous.
And these are clearly not the priorities of the American people, Ilan, because as two now recent polls have shown the majority of people disagree with what he's doing. They are protesting against it. And what's interesting is that I think it's something like 54% or 57% disagree with his immigration policy. And then there was another 52% that said that despite the fact that he basically said this is exactly what he was going to do, didn't think that this was what he was going to do.
Yeah. You know, an interesting moment is taking place within the Latino community, and there have been some interesting pieces in the media. I never know if the media is in this realm involved in wishful thinking or is actually reflecting an accurate change. There is a shakeup of what it's called the red tie among the Latino community. Yes, many Latinos gave up on the Democratic Party and switched to the Republicans in this past election. But after 7 months of Trump, there are misgivings in the Latino community that people have been mistreated, that fathers and mothers have been sent back, and the children and grandchildren are left alone. And you can see it in border cities in Texas, particularly, but also in other parts of the country where Latino families are thinking again if this is the right, if what they voted was the right approach, and how the texture of the Latino family, the cohesion of the Latino family is being undermined by these fascist forces that are not paying attention to individuals, because it's individuals ultimately that we're talking about. What the Trump administration does is throw them all into numbers, big numbers. It's individuals that are really tearing up, their disappearance is tearing apart the Latino family.
Well, okay, so maybe you can explain this to me. We have only about a minute left, but I genuinely don't understand, especially for people who came from authoritarian countries, or people who've seen this or witnessed it or heard tell of it from their older relatives, how they could look at someone like Trump and think that he was going to be different. Especially when he was pretty naked about what he was going to do. It wasn't like he was shying away from it. Absolutely. I don't understand how that could have happened.
That's a fascinating and such an urgent and timely question. I've put a lot of thought and a lot of research into it over the years. I think that running away from dictatorial, tyrannical regimes doesn't always translate into embracing the rowdiness, the sometimes superficially chaotic nature of democracy. And some Latinos in times of trouble resort to, and not only Latinos, other groups as well, resort to that authoritarian father figure who will save you from the distress that you're going through. And maybe this is something ancestral Latin America went through many dictatorships before it finally settled on some democratic regimes that have continued. I think there's a divide here between the older immigrant generation that looks at the dictatorial figures as saviors and the younger generation of Latinos that is much more open, more educated, and understands that democracy is loud and democracy can sometimes lead you in confusing ways, but ultimately it's a far better system of government
than any of the other ones. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much, Ilan. I appreciate that answer in particular. We've been speaking with Ilan Stavans. He's the professor of humanities and Latin American and Latino culture at Amherst College, publisher of Restless books in Amherst. The show continues here in Boston. For you listening on any PM, tune into the fabulous 413 starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Coming up after the noon news, NBC Boston News influencer Sue O'Connell, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Princeton's Khalil Gibran Muhammad, and I'm Andrea Cabral. She's Shirley Leung. You've been listening to BPR on GPH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Braude and Margery Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you,
and Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, offering Burnt Island Lighthouse adventure cruises. Visitors can explore a historic lighthouse on a pristine island off the coast of Maine. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. As World War II rages on, criminals try to take advantage of the resulting chaos. But with Detective Foyle on the case, they aren't having much luck. Don't miss Foyle's War tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Jim Browdy. Ahead on hour number 2 of BPR, it's NBC 10's Sue O'Connell on exactly what Donald Trump was referring to when he wrote about quote-unquote wonderful secrets in a 2003 birthday message to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and what's going to come of the president's lawsuit against Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal for reporting on it. Plus, how the cheating CEO getting caught at the Coldplay concert became America's most memeable story of the summer.
I'm Shirley Leung, in for Margery Egan. Then we'll be checking in with Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett on the latest health headlines. This week, there's new evidence on the harms of vaping, doctor-prescribed social excursions, and why tanning isn't as healthy as RFK Jr. wants you to believe. And she'll try to explain what's up with Trump's swollen ankles. All that and more ahead on the second hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Israel has begun a new ground operation in central Gaza that it has largely avoided in the war so far. And the growing desperation among Palestinians scrambling to get to food and other life-saving supplies has resulted in another deadly encounter. Local health officials say more than 100 Palestinians were killed by the Israeli military as they tried to get food yesterday. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi has the latest.
The Israeli military issued new evacuation orders for Palestinians to leave parts of Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. This is an area that Israeli troops have avoided for fear of endangering hostages who are believed to be held there. This comes as UN officials said Israeli tanks and snipers fired at Palestinians in northern Gaza as they gathered around a border fence with Israel to try to get food from a UN World Food Program aid convoy. The Israeli military said they posed a threat to troops. This on the same day that the U.S.-based World Central Kitchen charity said it ran out of ingredients to cook warm meals in Gaza. The UN says that the territory remains at critical risk of famine. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Cybersecurity experts in government and in the private sector are warning of a newly discovered digital vulnerability already being exploited by hackers around the world. It's affecting a piece of Microsoft software. More from NPR's Jenna McLaughlin.
The Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has released a new alert warning about a flaw in Microsoft SharePoint. The problem exists on a version of the collaboration tool that clients install locally rather than connect to online. If hackers break in using this flaw, they could access everything hosted on the platform, including secret cryptographic keys, and essentially take control, according to CISA. Microsoft says it continues to work on and release patches to secure the software. Experts are still trying to identify the scope and scale of digital attacks using this new technique. However, several cybersecurity companies say it's already affecting governments and corporations around the globe. Jenna McLaughlin, NPR News.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited the Customs and Border Protection officer who was injured in a shooting in New York City over the weekend in an attempted robbery. She says a second person's also in custody in connection with the shooting.
We were able to bring the second individual in and have detained him as well, and he will face consequences and hopefully strong prosecution for his crimes and his involvement on Saturday night.
The DHS says the first suspect arrested is a citizen of the Dominican Republic who entered the U.S. illegally in 2023 and was released. Noem says he was arrested multiple times in the city and appeared to partly blame what happened over the weekend on the city's sanctuary policies. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A federal judge in Boston has continued the sentencing hearing for former Boston City Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson, who pled guilty to corruption charges in May. On Friday, the judge in the case approved a motion from Fernandez Anderson's attorney requesting a continuance of that hearing. And according to the motion, Fernandez Anderson recently submitted a response to the probation office, including a variety of requested documentation. The Massachusetts-based biotechnology company Sarepta Therapeutics is laying off close to 500 employees, more than a third of its total workforce, as it faces pushback from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration on one of its treatments. According to a Massachusetts Workers Adjustment Retraining Notice, Sarepta, which is headquartered in Cambridge, also has facilities in Andover and Bedford, is cutting 493 people from its payroll and will undergo a strategic restructuring expected to save about $400 million per year. Sarepta develops treatments for several types of genetic diseases and was recently put under investigation by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration after 2 patients who received treatment died from liver failure earlier this year. The FDA has asked the company to stop shipments of that drug, but the company says it will only stop some shipments and will update its safety measures on its labels. Red Sox open a series with the Phillies in Philadelphia tonight. In the forecast, plenty of sunshine coming your way. My, oh my, what a beautiful day. 76 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of BPR and GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Shirley Leung from the Boston Globe, and I'm in for Jim Browdy.
And I'm former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral, and I'm in for Margery Egan. They're going to be back on the air at the BPL tomorrow, and they're going to be joined by the 3 suspended Market Basket executives who were removed at the same time as Market Basket's beloved CEO, RDT. CNN's John King will be with them, and more. Hello again, Shirley.
Hello again, Andrea. So we are now joined by Zoom from renowned media maven Sue O'Connell. She's co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, commentator and news influencer at NBC Boston. Good day, Sue. You guys were
hello.
You're here Friday, right? Both of you.
Yeah, I was going to say this is like the Jumbotron. Andrew's already cheating on me, but that's okay. That's all right.
I'm just taking a page from current events, Sue. I won't duck down. I won't duck down out of sight of the camera. So, Sue, we just had a caller. We want to talk to you about this, Trump's lawsuit against. Trump doesn't have friends. He only has former friends. So he's got a lawsuit now against another former friend, Rupert Murdoch, who's probably done more than most to help get Trump where he is. He's suing Murdoch because the Wall Street Journal published this birthday note that he supposedly wrote to Epstein. But we had a caller in the opening talker who was saying that him filing this lawsuit, it would be the American people that would be paying for it. I think she was assuming that it would be the Department of Justice that would be representing him because he was saying that he was being defamed as president. I think of defamation and libel as individual. You can't defame the office of president. The office is not a person. So I think it's a personal cause of action that if he has a cause of action against them. But here's the thing. He's already extorted, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from certain law firms to do pro bono work for the causes he cares about. Isn't he going to get free representation anyway?
Yeah, he will. And, I think this is an interesting choice, too, of who he's going to sue, right? Because I wouldn't sue Rupert Murdoch. And I think, even though the Dominion issue with Fox and all of that, that was all really legitimate. The Wall Street Journal is a different type of media company from Fox. And I know that Rupert Murdoch has been in the Oval Office a number of times with Trump. They've had a number of conversations in both terms. There's been reporting that J.D. Vance may have visited with Rupert Murdoch or somebody from the Wall Street Journal before the lawsuit or the story was published and the lawsuit was announced. So, and this is also the newspaper that, this is a conservative. And I don't mean conservative necessarily in politics, just a conservative newspaper and how they report and what they do. And that does tend to lean them more to the right. A lot of the people who Trump looks to support him, especially during this crazy tariff economy, up and down, prices, inflation, all this craziness, believe in the Wall Street Journal and read the Wall Street Journal religiously. So this is a very interesting crossroads, I think, for Donald Trump between he's doing this to show his MAGA base that I am defending you because I did nothing wrong and I will release the Epstein files. And at the same time, everybody who reads the Wall Street Journal is laughing, I think, for the most part. Like, dude, what are you doing here? Now you're fighting with everybody, to your point, Andrea. If you're friends with Donald Trump, you're just a future recipient of a lawsuit or a cell, right? So, I could not have predicted that. I think this might actually be a tipping point for Trump when it comes to really slicing through so many of his constituencies. It is an amazing thing to watch happen.
I mean, I think he's suing out of desperation, right? I mean, who sues the Wall Street Journal? I mean,
no one.
It's a real. I mean, you have to, and they, the Journal. I mean, we used to work at the Journal. I mean, they said the right things. They said we stand by reporting, and of course, being the Journal, they knew they might be sued, so they're going to make sure that their sources are solid.
Truth is an absolute defense. First of all, you're suing the Wall Street Journal, to your point, but truth is an absolute defense to defamation and libel. And of all the people that you could sue for that, you're going to sue the guy who knows where every one of your bodies is buried? Are you kidding me?
And as you both know, and all of our listeners know, often people will settle, and I think that's probably been the case with Paramount and with ABC. They settle for other reasons. It's not because they're admitting guilt. They're settling because it's too much effort, too much cost, or their insurance company is making them settle. But on the other hand, Rupert Murdoch has plenty of money, has plenty of time. He's going to ignore his insurance company. Every publication, for the most part, has some libel insurance for nuisance suits and things like this. This could be a very expensive case for Rupert Murdoch, but at this point in his life, I've never met the man, but I know people who know him. I don't think they're going to care about it.
And I think that those two, I mean, they were, haven't Trump and Murdoch had a falling out, right? Didn't they have a falling out? They're not exactly buddies anymore, right? Don't they hate each other?
No, I don't know if they hate each other. I mean, I think Rupert Murdoch was in the Oval Office during this term at some point for a visit. I think when Elon Musk called one day, he was on. No, I mean, just this is a crazy. Now everyone's mad at everybody, right? Elon called. Oh, look, I'm here with Rupert hanging out. Oh, there's Kanye over there. So I don't know where they are in their relationship, but I know that Rupert Murdoch is. There's been so much reporting on the relationship between Donald Trump and Epstein. So many things that have come out of his mouth, Donald Trump's mouth, about that relationship. This looks like an airtight story that they published. It's just going to keep it in the news. Again, another mistake you make is if Donald Trump just ignored it, his base may not have even known that it was in the Wall Street Journal. So it's just, again, another self-inflicted wound around this Epstein relationship that Trump is now engaging in.
So the other big bombshell that happened late last week, and you guys talked a little bit about this on Friday, was CBS canceling Stephen Colbert, the incredible, the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And I was in the camp that this is completely political. CBS is owned by Paramount. Paramount needs to get a deal, needs to get a merger deal blessed by the DOJ, and CBS already settled, right, with the Trump administration or with President Trump over a 60 Minutes episode. And so, but I was thinking, but the more I learn about it, I wonder, yes, some of it perhaps it's political, but it's also financial too, right? These late night shows are losing money, and I believe Colbert was losing quite a bit of money, even though he is the number one. He's been number one for quite a long time. What's your take?
I think that, and Andrea and I talked about this too on Friday. I think this is one of those situations where all things are true at the same time. Okay. There is not anyone under the age of 30 who on a regular basis watches an entire episode of Jimmy Fallon or Kimmel or late night. They don't watch television. They don't watch the entire episode. Now, the content from those shows goes on TikTok, goes on YouTube, and they watch the clips of them. If you go, this was true when Ellen was on. Her ratings started to drop, but her YouTube clips were through the roof. We don't make any money from the YouTube the way that we make it from the networks. The business model just is completely favoring Google, who owns YouTube. So is there a chance that there was a meeting and they said, look, we don't think we can continue to have the show on the air anymore. Oh, look, we have an opportunity here where we have this president who is looking for a pound of flesh. Why don't we announce the cancellation now, the non-renewal of his contract? We'll figure out how we're going to monetize stuff on YouTube and social media later. And, oh, look, we threw a bone to the Trump administration. So I think all those things are true at the same time. I'm sad that the idea that it's a benefit to acquiesce to government pressure around free speech is happening. I definitely think that's part of it. But like you said, Shirley, I don't think it's the main thing. And I think that the days are numbered for all of these shows, regardless of what political path that they may be satirizing people on. Even though we know if Kamala Harris was the president now, she'd be made fun of on these shows as well. So,
Okay, so last week people are sitting around Gillette Stadium, minding their own business, enjoying a little music, screaming, play clocks at Coldplay, and then this happens.
All right, come on, you're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
Now this is not funny, certainly for the people who were involved in it, but I think Chris Martin, he certainly didn't have any idea who he was referring to. He was just making an observation on the Jumbotron, which caught two people canoodling, I will use a very prudish sort of word, on the cam, both of whom had a very visceral reaction to being put up on the camera. So, what has happened in the hours since this viral moment?
Yeah, well, the important part of the story, of course, is that the two people, one was the CEO of the company and the other was his human resources director.
Human resources.
Can't believe
can you imagine? I was saying to Shirley, can you imagine all the people that she's counseled about their behavior within the company?
Yeah, the CEO should not be be in a relationship with anybody.
Well, he also shouldn't be touching. I mean, even if we take them, at their word that maybe it was just an intimate, fun little moment there, you shouldn't be touching your human resources manager that way. I mean,
and certainly not if you're married to somebody else who's not there.
Yeah. So since then, he has Andy Byron is his name, and Astronomer is the company. He has resigned. And the company is assessing all of this information. And it's funny, I think in the telling of the story, because it is just so amazing. And if you watched any kiss cams at sporting events or other concert events over the weekend, it's now become a real life meme. Like people are doing it when they're they're
really?
Jumping away.
Oh, wow.
It's become not just things that people are doing and recreating it for TikTok or X or whatever platform you're on. As soon as a camera lands on people at a baseball game, now they're doing it. Okay, the mascots are even doing it. It's
wow.
become
the Philly fanatic. That's right.
It's been crazy. So, the issues here, a number of them are, number one, you walk into any arena with a ticket. If you read your ticket, you will see that it says you are most likely going to be on camera, right? And then number two, you do have no privacy in any of these stadiums. And number three, don't do things to your human resources director that you wouldn't do in a corporate meeting in front of your wife and family, I think are the other parts of it. So corrective action has been taken. Another tech CEO or another CEO has been sacrificed on the pyre of the public criticism. And hopefully it's a lesson learned there, but I don't think it will, because because someone who would do that in front of people isn't really going to be worrying about what the consequences are. So I will say that as someone who is out talking to people on a regular basis, they call it MOS, man on the street, because other acronyms don't really sound that well. I have sometimes said, oh, hey, you don't want to talk to me? What are you, in the witness protection program? And then someone runs away. And I stopped doing that the first time someone looked at me like, yes, I am. So I'm not blaming Coldplay for this whatsoever. But, accusing someone of having an affair when it clearly they might be is a challenge.
I mean, what's interesting is if you think about it, if they had reacted differently, right? If they just pretended, and smiled and they didn't react the way they did, this wouldn't be a big story at all, right?
Because people don't know his company or him.
Right. I mean, I never heard of this company.
I think there's a level of sociopathic behavior you have to do to be able to pull that off. I mean, I always tell people, if I'm talking about someone in another room and they walk in, I continue to talk about them. I just change the topic that I'm talking about them. Obviously, if I was caught on that kiss cam doing the same thing, I would not be in the news right now because clearly I'm a cold-blooded killer around that. But, it is a hard thing to suddenly realize that you're up there and then It's also a great litmus test to try and judge when you're seeing things that have been staged, right? Because staged things, everything works perfectly, and someone might have reacted in a different way, but that's really an authentic and sad. And, I feel bad for their families because, not only are you suddenly your dad's no longer the CEO and now your mom is a meme. I mean, it's just a reminder to all of us to try and act in public the way we'd want our children to see us in the future.
Well, I certainly hope she reported herself to Human Resources. Or reported herself to Toby from The Office, who was the head of Human Resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Sue, so I think a lot of us, I actually thought that this day had already come, but apparently there's new data that shows that streaming has officially surpassed broadcast and cable as a share of total television viewing, according to Nielsen data. Tell us more about this, and I was actually struck by how much more. I mean, how many more people are streaming these days?
Yeah, and it's also, I want to put a little caveat out there, Shirley, and I know that you know this, and Andrea, we talked a little bit about this Friday off the air. The way that they measure things is an apples to oranges to pears to carrots, right? So when we look at the Nielsen ratings from the last decade, they're guesses. Right? They send a bunch of people some diaries to fill out one way or another, or they put a little machine on top of your television and they try and guess how many you're watching. They have heat seekers that would see how many people in the room watching a show. So and they use that data to sell to advertisers. That's the main idea. It sets the rates for the advertisements. And the advertisers are all fine with it being an estimate as well. And then you're in streaming, right? And they are counting in a variety of different ways. They're counting how many times you watch, how many times you check in. They don't really know if you're watching, and sometimes they don't know how long you're watching for. And Netflix is very, very close to the vest about how they do the data that they collect. And that has been a really big change for television producers and directors, because they may be told that they're number one in Netflix, but they don't really know what the numbers are, as opposed to if you were number one on NBC, you know what the number estimate is. So it's a little hard to parse out what the victory here and how many people are watching and who is watching. But as all of the networks move into streaming, whether it's Peacock or Paramount, you're definitely seeing a different way to reach people and count people. And the downside to all of this is that the advertisers, the cost per being on a platform, and even the money that they make from the subscription services is less than they used to make 10 years ago from selling advertising on a network or on a local station. So you're seeing this turmoil in the business model and the revenue, back to our Colbert conversation, because we keep launching these things without really having a method of monetizing them effectively or making the money that we need. So everything is really still in chaos, Shirley, and I don't think it's going to settle anytime soon.
Well, I understand that. And as we said, I'm sure I said it on the air on Friday, that I'm a Roku person. I stream everything. Right. I watch virtually no broadcast, and I canceled cable a while ago. So I sort of get that, but data drives where advertisers go. I mean, there's the challenge of figuring out how to monetize a particular delivery system of content, right? So that you can get your ad on the air. But if data drives where they go, and YouTube will, you could watch something for 30 seconds and then abandon it, and YouTube will count that as someone who has viewed. It's a viewing. I don't understand how you ever drill down sufficiently or with enough empiric accuracy to know what it is you're buying.
Stop right there. There's no empiric accuracy ever in ratings, ever. Right. So,
but this seems particularly bad.
No. It's the way that when I was, I think 13, I got an Arbitron diary back in the 70s, radio diary to fill out.
I remember those.
And I filled it out with my pencil. I think I got $1 to do it. And because it was summer, my listening patterns were different than they would have been in the fall. So I wrote down, I listened to WRKO in the morning. I listened to Dale Dorman. I tuned into RKO for Ann Landers. I looked at you pick up the newspaper and you would look and see what the schedule was for the radio station on the day, for the day. And I totally lied on my Arbitron diary and sent it in because it's what I would have been doing. Right? And I'm not the only one who did that at 13 years old. I'm sure everyone had wish casting, like what they wished they had been watching. So it's always, and we've always complained when I worked at WFNX, we had terrible ratings because we had college kids as our listeners who didn't have landlines and didn't get the diary. So we were always at the bottom of the list of radio stations, even though we'd have a concert on the Hatch Shell that would attract, almost 100,000 people and cause a riot. That was the Green Day concert. So they've always been a guess and a guesstimate that everyone agrees this is how we're going to do it. But now the streaming services, especially the Netflixes, are saying, we're not even going to tell you. We're just going to guess. And for radio, if you listen for 6 minutes, I don't know if this is still true, but if you listen for 6 minutes, you get the whole quarter hour. So, it's always been how long can you get them to listen? When can you it's like calling a lawyer, right? If you talk to them over 16 minutes, they bill you for the whole hour, I think. So it's basically the same thing. But again, everyone is on a different page. Everyone is monetizing it differently. And the advertisers also used to buy because they wanted to be on a show. Right? They wanted to be on Johnny Carson, or they wanted to be on one of the soap operas, which were named because soap advertisers used to advertise to reach housewives. Now they're not necessarily caring about what show they're on or what website or what YouTuber. They're buying the numbers of the demographic that they're reaching. And that's really also changing the entire business.
I mean, there's no question that streaming is upending everything. I mean, whether we have the best data or not, I mean, everything is moving on to right now YouTube. I mean, I think about my kids. I mean, I think they don't even know how to turn on the TV, to get to the right channel. They're going straight for the Netflix screen or oftentimes they'll watch YouTube on the big screen.
Right, right.
And so I think you're right. Everything is in chaos right now because how do you make money? Doing this. I mean, even podcasts, right? Podcasts are moving to YouTube right now to try
which defeats the purpose of a podcast, which is supposed to be listening, but now you have to watch them as well. I can live without looking at Joe Rogan in addition to listening to him, and I don't listen to him.
Right. The podcast is basically radio, right? And now they're taking it and they're making it television.
Right.
And, and these long podcasts that we're seeing, I wonder if they're watching the podcast, what are they? I mean, I was looking at some of the numbers of how long these podcasts are and how many people are listening to. And as we all know, I watch a lot of television. But in the regular times before we had all these options, it was not uncommon for a person to watch 3 hours of television a day. Right? They'd watch the morning news, they'd get home, they'd watch the nighttime news, and then they'd watch their 3 or 4 hours of sitcoms or dramas, and those numbers stacked up. I think what people are doing now with the podcasts are they're putting them on and listening to them, even if they're not watching them.
Right.
Or they're, checking in and out and walking around listening to it. So, I always love these advancements because we end up acting exactly the same way we acted before.
Right. I mean, it's kind of, what are they calling? They're calling these video podcasts the new cable, right? You just turn it on. You're maybe not watching the quote unquote podcast. You're just listening in the background.
And I also love how we all cut the cord and you have a number of people walking around going, wow, I wish there was one place where I could get all of my shows. And what used to be called cable.
Right.
You could just get HBO, Showtime, NBC 10 Boston, Channel 5, Channel 4, Channel 7, 25, Channel 2, 44, 56, 38, and they were all right there. And now you have to go around and try to remember what streamer you watched that program on. I must spend 10 minutes a day trying to remember where that show was that I wanted to go back to.
But on the upside, it's not going to cost you $250 a month.
True.
Yeah,
well,
that's a big part of it.
We'll see.
Yeah, well, right now it's not. Just like cable used to be $2 a month, and then it went to $250. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome. Great to see you. Who are you going to be with next week, Andrew? I'm keeping an eye on you.
I'm not back until August. I'll cheat on you again in August.
All right. Great to see you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with local woman Sue O'Connell, co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, also a commentator and news influencer at NBC Boston. Coming up after this quick break, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett joins us to talk about new research finally showing the harms of vaping. I'm former Massachusetts Secretary Public Safety Andrea Cabral, and she is the Boston Globe's Shirley Leung. We're in it today for Jim and Margery. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, which is also streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Ambulances and military medics can't routinely carry blood because it goes bad too fast. But scientists are optimistic that they may be closer to successfully creating artificial blood.
The moment it's needed, a medic can mix it with water, and within a minute you have blood.
A look at the latest research on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And GM Roth Design Remodeling. Dreams delivered. With custom kitchens, bathrooms, and additions. Serving New England for over 39 years. Learn more at gmroth.com. And Newport Mansions, presenting Richard Morris Hunt in a new light. An illuminating exhibition examining the architect's pursuit of national pride in art and architecture and his vision for a gilded American civilization. Tickets at newportmansions.org.
Welcome back to BPR. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung, in for Jim Braude, with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral, in for Margery Egan. As vaping gets ever more popular among young adults and teenagers, it turns out inhaling superheated chemicals into your lungs isn't good. Joining us now to talk about the new studies on the impacts of vaping and other medical headlines like the president's swollen ankles is Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett. She's got the best nickname, Dr. KGB. She's also vice chair of primary care innovation and transformation at Boston Medical Center, associate professor at Boston University Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Hello, Dr. KGB.
Hi, it's so wonderful to see both of you today.
It's very good to have you here. And before we get to the harms of vaping, last week, John Gruber was on talking about how essentially the Trump administration is trying to dismantle Medicaid without telling people that they're trying to dismantle Medicaid, using onerous, prohibitive re-enrollment and recertification processes just to get people kicked off. And part of the conversation with John at the end was about what private NGOs and nonprofits can do to educate people about how to keep their enrollment alive. You wrote a really, really good piece in the Boston Globe back in August of 2023, when this was just a conversation. It wasn't a reality yet about what they might do to Medicaid. And so, and it always bears repeating your suggestions in here, explaining how what's going to happen is going to happen, and how states can act as governmental entities to approach this, I think is invaluable. Can you just, remind us of your very cogent thoughts from August of 2023?
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to listen to that interview last week with John and really appreciated it. And, I know that your listeners you're really tapped into Medicaid and sort of a lot of what has transpired since July 4th with the passing of the big, beautiful bill. But I want to remind listeners, so we can all get regrounded on Medicaid itself for just a moment, because I think that there's actually research to show that even people who understand Medicaid still have stigma or bias around what Medicaid is and, what it does and what it doesn't do. So first of all, Medicaid is health insurance, right? So people know that. But what I think that people don't necessarily think about is that fact that 40% of children in the United States of America are covered by Medicaid, and 25% of all births are covered. So just to give that scope in terms of thinking about the health of our future and our families, and that we also know, and John, I think, did a really good job pointing this out, Medicaid is incredibly complicated, so we can absolutely go into some of those pieces. But we know that people on Medicaid are, for the very vast majority, they are working, they are doing their best, we are striving, they're striving for their health. So what we know in terms of Massachusetts with the passage of the big, beautiful bill, what we're looking at is, about 5% of Massachusetts residents will likely come off of Medicaid. And so that's over the next decade or so. So, one of the pieces that I wrote that you're alluding to, and I know we can talk about sort of looking forward to what we can do as a state, I wrote in the context of us coming off pandemic, kind of responsiveness and what we had to do, or the federal government and state government was mandated to do in terms of kind of unenroll folks and make sure that they were still allowed to be on Medicaid, right? So it was, we saw it as sort of this great unwinding from Medicaid. And one of the pieces that I wrote for the Globe is, how do we understand what some of the lessons were of the pandemic in terms of how we best responded? So one is really thinking about the expertise of our community members, right? So we know that the onus for people on Medicaid to have to prove twice a year that they are eligible for Medicaid, and we know they are eligible for Medicaid with the work requirements and all the paperwork and everything we know will happen. This is not going to be something that can fall on the shoulders of individuals. So we need to think about what are the community experts telling us in terms of how to best leverage voices, trusted voices in the community, whether it's, spiritual leaders, whether you go to community centers. How do you explain to people how to get themselves or keep themselves enrolled? And how do we do this kind of strategically with state legislators as well? I know that their Mass Health is actually really hoping to strategize ways to use databases so people don't have to do this on their own in Massachusetts. But how can the state think through, expertise and knowing how to keep communities enrolled? And then I think, how do you show up where people, love, live, and pray and get, education? And in terms of what the strategies are for communication. And then, one of the pieces that I saw so effectively working in our state during the pandemic was this private-public connection, right? So thinking about how can hospitals be working with private entities? I worry as a primary care doctor, how much of this is going to fall on our shoulder? We're already just so exhausted and have very little left to give. The last thing we want is for our patients to fall off the Medicaid rolls, and yet how much, can private entities be helping us keep people enrolled? And then finally, and I've seen this, is just the power of stories. So people coming forward, sharing their stories. There was a great piece in the New York Times audio a couple weeks ago about a rural doctor talking about impact on Medicaid in her patients. And she showed that impact, yes, by facts and figures, but really by telling the stories of, a 30-year-old gentleman who had terrible ulcers on his legs and got back on Medicaid and was able to run his farm again, right? So how do we understand the true impact of these Medicaid cuts on individuals and not just have it be kind of a ticker tape storyline?
I mean, that was one of the silver linings of the conversation with Gruber last week, is that I felt that Massachusetts is on top of this, that we're, even though, I mean, just to give you a sense, 5%, this, Dr. Barnett, but 5% of the entire state population, it's about 326,000 people in Massachusetts that could fall off of Medicaid. And so that is huge. That's a lot of people. And it was good to hear that we are getting organized. We've been organized. We know what tools we have in our toolkit to get the word out, to keep people on Medicaid, because as we've talked about last week with Gruber, was the idea that I guess the government is cutting Medicaid by having, or they keep saying we're not cutting Medicaid, but they are. But the way they're doing is people will fail to won't know how to re-enroll. Yeah, they won't. What was it? Redetermination. They will not go through the redetermination process because it's perhaps suddenly only in English, right?
Well, on top, to add insult to injury,
right? And so it's really incumbent on us here in Massachusetts, from doctors to nonprofit groups to churches, right, to help people stay enrolled. So I'm so glad that message from the get-go is already out there.
Yeah, I will put an asterisk, which is, Massachusetts absolutely has the right tools and the right people ready to go. But, we know when we watched Georgia, for instance, institute some of these work requirements, it took $92 million for mostly tech upgrades to make sure that people stayed on the roll. So this is not just where there's a will, there's a way. Like, this will actually create a huge amount of extra work and extra resources for our state to be doing this work. So I don't want to be Pollyannish about it. I do think that we've got, again, a huge wealth of knowledge, but it is going to be a huge lift and will leave us in, even more dire financial straits.
So, Dr. Barnett, I decided I don't call it the big, beautiful bill. I think as of today, I've decided I'm just going to call it the American home invasion bill. You surprise them, you rush in, you beat up the occupants, you leave them in bad health, and you rob them blind. And that's basically what this bill does. In addition to creating sort of another onslaught of student loan repayments, like restructuring everything that Biden had done to make it easier for people to pay back their loans, or amnesty for their loans. Yeah. Obviously, Trump is reversing all that, so all of this debt is going to come flooding back to all of these people. But for medical students in particular, as part of this bill, they have now decided, apparently, that the federal government is going to make it harder for you to become a doctor. Tell people what else around student loans is in this bill.
Yeah, I hope I'm not always seen as the, gray cloud of bad news, but and I do think there's so many amazing reasons to go into medicine. I have the great honor and privilege of mentoring, young people all the time and see, the kind of growth into amazing physicians. But the point that you're making around the student loans, which is a provision in, I'll just say, the bill, that people don't always think about or don't always hear about, to your point, is really around the student loan provision. So in 2006, there was something called Grad Plus, which came out, which really allowed people who are going into grad school to borrow the entire lump sum of money that they needed to go through grad school from the federal government. And so this is rolling this back, this provision from 2006 to say that, you can only get a certain amount of federal loans to go to grad school. And specifically, when we're talking about medical school, dental school, or law school, which we know are three of the most kind of expensive graduate programs, students can only borrow $50,000 a year and max out at $200,000. So that sounds like a lot of money, and I recognize it is a lot of money, but unfortunately, these graduate programs are even more expensive than that. So it is going to put the onus of responsibility on young people who want to go into things like medicine and dentistry. We have a massive shortfall of dentists in this country as well. They won't be able to get all their loans from the federal government. So they'll have to go and get private loans, which have, all kinds of other requirements on them.
And much higher interest rates.
Much higher interest rates. And so again, it's putting just yet other kind of stumbling block before people who want to go into medicine. And I always think about this: never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So it's sort of this attributed to Churchill, but actually I think was Rahm Emanuel under Obama who said it. And so, like, one of the things again that we can think about in the state, again, this is like an opportunity for the state to be thinking more creatively, given our primary care crisis, given the shortfall of physicians we're going to see, is that can we as a state, across the board, say anybody who is going into primary care, who is going to stay in Massachusetts, will have loan forgiveness, and just make it, a service to our state, and understanding that the only way we're going to make the citizens or maintain the health of our citizens of Massachusetts is to have a better, more robust workforce, and that includes primary care.
I mean, now you don't even need loan forgiveness. It seems like if you found a way to just support them, to give them a low interest loan. I mean, $50,000 a year. I mean, it's $100,000 a year for just undergraduate now. And I think the story was saying that medical school at a private university, something like Stanford, it's $150,000 a year, right, or something like that. I mean, it's nothing. This 200,000 cap is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. It doesn't, most med schools are 4 years, and so it doesn't even cover half your time there. So it is, it's also on med schools to think about how much they're charging. So it's, it takes a lot of people to be putting their heads together to think creatively around solutions. But this definitely doesn't help our future workforce in medicine.
And I also think about, also this, this anti-immigrant stance. I mean, I think a lot of, don't we have a lot of doctors or, foreign doctors coming here to try to, whether it's to continue their education or to practice here? I mean, they also don't want to come to, I don't think they want to come to America either now too. So it's like we're going to have a real problem, a shortage of not just primary care doctors, but just doctors in general, right?
Yeah, no, it's estimated, without even touching Shirley on what you just said, and very important point, but that it's estimated by in the next decade we'll have about 86,000 doctor shortage. So that's across the board. Wow. And primary care, we're looking at around 48,000 primary care physician shortage for what our population needs. And obviously that distribution will be worse in rural communities, which will be facing the Medicaid cuts and impacts of Medicaid cuts, which we talked about. So I'm always, again, I like to think of myself as a glass half full person, but this is, you find silver linings, but there's a lot to work through right now that we need to be eyes wide open in terms of how this impacts not just folks on Medicaid, but all of us, not just people who, I don't think that necessarily wide-eyed, talented students who are coming through the pipeline are thinking about, what are the opportunities ahead and how can they be using their voices for advocacy around, changing some of this legislation.
The short-sightedness of all of these things, whether you're talking about what they're trying to do with healthcare, what they've done, what they're doing on the environment, rolling back regulations. All of these things are so gobsmackingly consistent in terms of their intentionality to hurt people.
Yeah.
And people aren't stopping, taking a deep breath and saying, why is everything I'm hearing about this administration doing designed to hurt someone? Maybe if you start there, you'll kind of get yourself to the point where you're kind of really understanding where we're at. But notwithstanding that, doctors, I love this. Doctors are now giving out social prescriptions to their patients for fitness, arts, socializing. I think this is a great way to kind of attack the mental health crisis we're all sort of simultaneously going through and empowering us to make ourselves better. So we only have a couple of minutes left, but talk a little bit about this social prescribing.
Yeah, so Julia Holtz, actually, I met with her directly and have had her come speak to our physicians. So she's a reporter, and she wrote something called The Connection Cure, which is really around social prescribing. I think it's an aspirational way of saying, really thinking about the ways that we know people get better, right? Which is not just about a prescription, and it's not just about, a weight loss regimen, but it's really thinking about what gives your life meaning and, what matters to you, right? And so how do we have that be the driving question when somebody comes into our office and say, biking, you love biking, like how can we get you back to biking? What would it take, right? And so there's, a kind of a national movement of bringing in things like exercise and art and music and nature to folks to understand that that's part of the prescription for living and well-being that we need to be doing and thinking about. And so, it's an invitation back to what we all know and trust to be the right thing for the care of human beings.
How does this come up when you're meeting with patients? Is there it's somewhat organized? This patient deserves a social prescription, or does it come up more organically? How does it get worked into conversations?
Well, I want to be clear. So this is this idea of a social prescription. It is a beautiful idea that's not like integrated into every clinic in the United States. This is a few very specific physicians who are taking this up as a beautiful kind of call to action. I think one of the things that we are working on so hard for those of us in leadership in primary care and in medicine is thinking through something called, value-based care, where you will actually get paid to take care of people and make them well versus what, the procedures you do. So the more that we get that in, Shirley, the more time we have to ask people what matters to you. And that's just, a core element of good primary care also, right? Because you need to understand the person. Like if I have somebody who I've been seeing for years and I know that their granddaughter is the apple of their eye and I don't ask them about their granddaughter, then I'm not actually doing my full intake for that visit, right?
It's good engagement.
It's the engagement. It's human relationships. It's building trust to make impacts on somebody's outcome. So it's not necessarily a recipe, but it's understanding the questions that matter to build better health.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnett. It's always good to see you. We've been speaking with Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, also Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Coming up after this quick break, we'll bring you our two more. She's Shirley Leung. We're in for Jim and Margery. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted, local news.
Local farmers say funding cuts to federal food assistance will have devastating effects.
GBH News.
Some state lawmakers are making another attempt to tighten Massachusetts' laws on the use of facial recognition technology by law enforcement.
Here for what matters to you.
Bill aimed at shielding personal data connected to reproductive and transgender healthcare has passed the Massachusetts House.
GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, helping families overcome the college planning stress. Committed to providing trusted guidance with calculators, step-by-step videos, and more. Details at mefa.org. And Boston Landmarks Orchestra, presenting The Best of Boston and Peter and the Wolf. Free concerts on July 23rd and July 30th at 7 at the DCR Hatch Shell. More at landmarksorchestra.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Shirley Leung and Andrea Cabral in for Jim and Margery. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's time for BPR's so-called Two More Things segment, where we cram in some additional thoughts in the day's news that didn't make it into the rest of the show. And Andrea, every time we're on together, we actually only get to do one more thing.
Right.
But I think today, it's the day that we actually do two more things. So Andrea, what's your thing today?
Well, I just wanted to comment on the fact that crime actually is down nearly across the board in Massachusetts. And the reason that I bring it up is because, one is to dispel, the notion that people have given by the Trump administration that liberal cities are these, huge bastions of crime and that things are chaotic. They're not. And certainly in Massachusetts, they haven't been. And nearly every single category of crime, whether you're talking about robberies, aggravated assaults, motor vehicle thefts, have been on the decreasing, and homicides also on the decrease. And that, to me, is just a tribute to the fact that Massachusetts started community policing a long time ago. We are pretty intentional and pretty strident about pushing progressive strategies. We've decreased dramatically the number of people that we incarcerate. We've established specialty courts that deal with the problems that cause people to commit the offenses that bring them before the criminal justice system, and are delivering services to them to keep people out of jail and to keep their families whole and to keep them together. And I think it's something that Massachusetts should be proud of. We always talk about all the things that are going wrong. These are things that we can be proud of. We are seeing the fruits of all of that very intentional work around law enforcement and the criminal justice system, helping people in circumstances where they deserve help versus punishing them.
Andrea, can you take a little victory lap too? Come on.
Well, I haven't been out of it for a while. I haven't been around in it for a while. But no, I was glad to contribute.
But it doesn't happen overnight, right? It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, you were sheriff and then you were public safety secretary. So it takes a long time for some of these dividends to pay off. So I think you should take a little victory lap too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was fortunate to work with some of the best people that government service has ever seen.
All right. So my one thing. I think we were able to do it. I think we were able to get to two more more things.
Yeah, this is good.
Is that the Globe today? My colleagues at the Globe, we unveiled a new Suffolk University / Boston Globe poll in the Boston mayoral race, and incumbent Mayor Michelle Wu enjoys a commanding 30-point lead.
That's big.
Over her closest rival, Josh Kraft. I mean, a lot of us were watching this race very closely because one of the things that's happening is that people there are a lot of people who are unhappy with Wu, right? Or they don't like the bike lanes and they don't like paying higher property taxes. But according to this poll, her approval rating is really high. And even though Josh Kraft is thrown in and his supporters have thrown in millions and millions of dollars, a lot of the residents of Boston still support Wu. I mean, she has her popularity is even higher than the former mayor of Marty Walsh. So, so a lot of people are giving her still want to see her as mayor. So we're all waiting for the September 9th primary. So we'll see what happens. But
those are good numbers for mid-July.
It is good numbers, but I mean, it looks like Josh Kraft and Wu will probably be facing off in the finals in November. So that's my thing.
Okay, we're out of time. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, Khalil Gibran Muhammad of Princeton joins us to discuss the state of higher ed as the Trump administration continues its attack on Harvard and others. I'm Andrea Cabral. She's Shirley Leung. We're in for Jim and Margery, and you're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH. We're also streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Federal funding for public media has been eliminated. While GBH is evaluating the impact of these cuts, we're as committed as ever to our mission and to you. Help protect GBH by giving now, online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And M&M Skylights, installing and servicing the full range of commercial and residential V-Lock skylight products. Can be scheduled at mmskylights.com. And the Boston Speakers Series, continuing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall with 7 evenings featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. bostonspeakers.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Shirley Leung, in for Margery Egan. Ahead on hour number 3 of BPR, Harvard officials are in federal court today for a major hearing in their $2 billion funding fight against the Trump administration. We'll get reflections on Harvard's case and the battle over higher ed from Princeton's Khalil Gibran Muhammad.
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Jim Browdy. Then, to end our Monday, we talked earlier in the show about growing recognition in the medical community about the importance of being social as a key to better health. What are the things that you do to stay connected in order to live a happier, healthier, and longer life? What's your social prescription? Weekly pickleball? Yoga? Dog park meetups? Drinks with the guys and gals? And how has it made your life better? And how are you staying connected with those friends? That's next on the third hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. With an eye toward the midterm elections and the balance of power in Congress, Republican lawmakers in Texas are holding a special legislative session and are set to redraw the state's congressional maps. NPR's Hansi Lo-Wang reports on why Governor Greg Abbott is pushing for new maps 5 years before the next census.
Abbott pointed to a letter he received this month from the Justice Department under the Trump administration, and that letter claims the map that Republican lawmakers passed back in 2021 is unconstitutional. You know, a lot of legal experts are skeptical of the letter's reasoning, though, because President Trump has been vocal about wanting a new map that he thinks can get Republicans 5 more seats in Texas.
NPR's Hansi Lo-Wang reporting. A federal judge in Louisville is expected to hand down a sentence this afternoon for former police detective Brett Hankison. Hankison was convicted last fall of violating the rights of Breonna Taylor during a botched 2020 raid that ended in her killing. Roberta Roldan with Louisville Public Media has details.
The U.S. Probation Office recommended Hankison receive 11 to 14 years in prison. But last week, the Department of Justice endorsed a one-day jail sentence and questioned whether Hankison should have been prosecuted in the first place. Lawyers representing Taylor's family called the DOJ's sentencing memo a slap in the face, and they urged the judge to deliver justice. Taylor's mother and the people involved in the protest movement that her killing fueled in 2020 are expected to be at the courthouse this afternoon. Hankison's conviction came during his third criminal trial. He was acquitted of state charges in 2022, and his first federal trial resulted in a hung jury. For NPR News, I'm Roberta Roldan in Louisville.
Ecuador's most notorious narcotics leader is now in the United States and is expected to face drug and weapons charges in federal court today. NPR's Carrie Kahn reports the gang was extradited, or leader rather, was extradited to the U.S. after his dramatic arrest in Ecuador earlier this year.
Jose Adolfo Macias Villamar, known as Fito, is the alleged head of Ecuador's powerful narcotics gang Los Choneros. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York, Macias was extradited Sunday from Ecuador. In an indictment unsealed earlier this year, Macias faces 7 counts, including conspiracy to traffic cocaine and firearms smuggling. Macias had escaped twice from Ecuadorian prisons. He was recaptured in a stunning operation last month where he was found hiding in an elaborate bunker under a coastal villa. In a recently passed referendum, Ecuadorians voted to allow extradition of its citizens as violence and homicides have skyrocketed in the once peaceful South American nation. Carrie Kahn, NPR News.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Brookline Transportation Board and the MBTA have asked for 6 more months to see if bus lanes near Brookline Village are worth it. The so-called Gateway East project created a bus-only lane last July that runs in both directions of Washington Street between Station Street and Brookline Village and the Brookline-Boston border. Ridership is high for the 60, 65, and 66 bus routes that run along the Route 9 stretch, which the T says has historically been a major bus bottleneck. But Brookline News reports that technical difficulties with the MBTA's traffic signaling system have led to limited data to decide whether the lane should be made permanent. If approved by the Select Board at the next town meeting, which is July 29, the T will collect 6 more months of data and continue to provide updates every 3 months, with a final vote on keeping the lane or getting rid of it to take place next May. Hundreds of motorcycle riders roared through mid-Cape Cod roads yesterday for the annual Big Nick's Ride for the Fallen. Riders began their 35-mile route at the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office in Bourne. They ended at the Sea Dog Brewing Company in South Yarmouth. The event honors the fallen military members who have ties to Cape Cod. Sunny and 80 degrees today, clear mid-50s overnight, mostly sunny upper 70s tomorrow, then mid-80s on Wednesday. We could be hazy, hot in Henry by Thursday. Right now, 77 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from BetterHelp, committed to making mental well-being a priority and offering support in taking on everything life demands, with therapists available to communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
Welcome back to hour number 3 of BPR and GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm the Boston Globe's Shirley Leung, in for Jim Browdy.
I'm Andrea Cabral. I'm in for Margery Egan. Jim and Margery are going to be back on the air at the BPL tomorrow. They'll be joined by the 3 suspended Market Basket executives who were removed at the same time as the CEO, RDT, plus CNN's John King will be on, and more. Hello again, Shirley.
Hello again, Andrea. We're joined now on Zoom by Khalil Gibran Muhammad. He's a professor of African American Studies and Public Affairs at Princeton. That's my alma mater, so yay. And he's now a visiting professor at Harvard's Kennedy School. Hello, Khalil.
Hi, Shirley, and hi, Andrea. Good to see you both.
Very good to see you as well. So, Khalil, the Department of Justice, which I have come to think of as now a wholly owned subsidiary of Trump Inc., is having a hearing today. They're before Judge Allison Burroughs And of course, their opponent is Harvard. Judge Burroughs also has the case involving Harvard and the Trump administration's attempt to keep international students out of Harvard. What's going on today? Give us an idea of what both sides are arguing and where you think this is going to go with this judge.
Sure. Well, this is the lawsuit that Harvard filed when it received a letter that the several members of the Trump administration demanded wholesale, essentially, management control over the university. They demanded changes to who gets hired, who teaches, what gets taught, how students are disciplined. They insisted upon auditing the university with third parties to test for viewpoint diversity. And Harvard filed a lawsuit in response saying this was an abridgment of their First Amendment rights. From the Harvard perspective, that's what this is fundamentally about, that the government has no right to censor and or police or define what is acceptable in terms of who teaches at a university and what gets taught. The university also is making a claim that the administration is not following its own procedural requirements when it comes to federal grants. And the grants total roughly $9 billion across a number of research pools at Harvard University. The administration is using the argument that under Title VI discrimination, that the Department of Education has the right, along with Health and Human Services, to cancel contracts when discrimination has been found by a organization that receives federal funding. So that's basically the two sides of the argument. The Trump administration saying we're protecting students from discrimination, particularly Jewish students, and we therefore are using the power of the budget to do so by getting you into compliance. And the university is essentially saying we are working through a process to align with the non-discrimination goals of these agencies, and you are not following that process, and you've extended the purview of the complaint beyond the actual documented claims.
I mean, I know Harvard has sued Trump, but do you think there's in the background to try to reach some kind of settlement agreement? Because I don't think Harvard wants this to drag on for another year. Or do you think that this suit means that they're not talking? They're just going to they're just going to work this out in the courts?
Yeah, it's a good question. We actually have on the record statements by members of the Trump administration, Linda McMahon, for example, who is the Secretary of Education, others who are either in the Department of Education or Department of Justice, have said, at least to the Washington Post and likely to the New York Times, that they are talking to Harvard University. They are in conversation. And we can judge to some degree by the responses of the university to attempt to address some of the underlying concerns, one of which has been the wholesale attack on DEI by the Trump administration and by the MAGA movement more generally. At this point, and over the past 2 weeks, Harvard University has essentially dismantled its entire DEI infrastructure. It started with the main office of the university, which carried the title of the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, has now been retitled Campus of Community and Campus Life. Across the roughly 12 schools at the university, DEI officials have been essentially, I don't know that they have all been fired, but some have left. Others have had their jobs reclassified, and the portfolio of work that fell under DEI has been eliminated. So we know that Harvard is doing what it thinks it should do in response. And we also know that Harvard University leadership currently believes that some of the DEI work that it was doing was essentially discriminatory towards Jewish students and towards white students, which is the principal argument against DEI for this administration.
Why does Harvard think that?
Well, I think that Harvard, like all institutions, is complicated. There are competing interests at Harvard University. And as the oldest, wealthiest, and arguably most powerful institution, Harvard was not at a leading institution with respect to establishing what we now call DEI. Harvard did actually lead in terms of recruitment of Black students going back to the 1970s. It has had a significant percentage of its population, hovering somewhere between 13 to 15%, although that also includes students who are foreign-born, who identify as Black, as opposed to students who identify as African-American or the descendants of enslaved, which is only roughly around 4 to 5%, which is kind of the national average for elite institutions. So the short answer to your question, Andrea, is that the conservative voices on campus have long opposed a lot of the effort more recently, particularly since 2020, to do more than just admit a significant number of Black students, to hire DEI officers. I served on an 18-month small 3-person committee of senior faculty, which included Mahzarin Banaji, who is one of the co-creators of the implicit association test, which has been famous for Harvard University in helping people to understand the science of bias. We produced a short report to help Harvard institutionalize its various diversity efforts around the campus. And we know from firsthand experience that it was not widely received across all universities, including John Manning, the former Harvard Law Dean, was one of the more vocal behind-the-scenes critics of that effort, and now is the provost. So you can see just how quickly things changed at Harvard University.
I'm at such a loss as to how I can't come to real conclusions about how to think about this, because the speed with which colleges and universities, Harvard included, have withdrawn from all of their DEI initiatives confirms for me this is stuff, like, more to your point, they didn't really want to do anyway. When there's something that you want to do as an institution, you figure out how to do it, and you figure out how to fight back when someone tells you that you can't do it. So on the one hand, I feel as though this is stuff that, you know, for them can go as quickly as it came about, and there was no real substance to it. On the other hand, I want them to fight back in a very substantive way, and I don't want to abandon them altogether, because I think they're one of the last bastions we have to, I mean, higher education has to remain higher education. It just seems to me as though Harvard and some of these other schools are willing to sort of dispense with the DEI stuff when it kind of suits them. They just don't want the administration getting into what they consider to be their areas of management and telling them what to do. So in some ways, trying to have it both ways. Am I wrong about that?
No, you are right. And a lot of this is absurd. So let's start with one of the more obvious aspects of the absurdities that are happening here. If we just take at face value the movement against DEI as a good faith movement, which it is not, but let's just take it
absolutely is not,
value.
right?
That it is at face value an effort to roll back illiberal efforts, that is to say, efforts that encourage censorship, that made, say, conservative students feel unwelcome, that promoted discrimination against white students. I mean, these are the principal arguments, and that mandatory trainings and closing down of speech, of limiting conversation about controversial topics. These have been the arguments going back to 2015, really, and arguments against the impact of Black Lives Matter on campus. But now what we see is precisely what some reporters and observers are pointing out, like Rose Horowitz at The Atlantic. She points out that here you have essentially the effort to protect Jewish students by focusing on anti-Semitism. And how to do that? Well, we need more training on anti-Semitism. We need more faculty who teach about anti-Semitism. We need to make sure that we're not hiring people who are anti-Semitic. Okay. We need to make sure that students who say things is not anti-Semitic and should not be welcomed, including international students. Hell, Why don't we close the borders to all international students? Because we can't guarantee that they won't reflect anti-colonial issues. Oh, and by the way, anybody who talks about settler colonialism or anti-colonialism is one step removed from being anti-Semitic or is actually anti-Semitic. Sound familiar? So essentially, they are putting in place a DEI bureaucracy just for Jews in an effort to protect Jews and white students from what they're calling reverse discrimination.
Right.
That is
it's insane.
It's insane.
Yes.
So one of the things that also in The Atlantic recently was a huge profile of Dr. Alan Garber, who is the president of Harvard. And the title of the article is, Can This Man Save Harvard? And so I don't know, Professor Muhammad, if you've interacted with Dr. Garber. I mean, what's your take on, I mean, is he the man that's going to save Harvard?
Well, no, he's not. And I've said this for now almost a year and a half. When I came on this show not long after Claudine Gay had been forced to resign, I had written an op-ed in CNN describing personal attacks on what I teach at Harvard by members of Congress in the December 5th testimony. I pointed out then, and I've said this many times in the media, although only recently reported in a Franklin Foer piece for The Atlantic, that Alan Garber sat behind Claudine Gay on that day when she said that calls for genocide against Jews or any other claims of violence towards Jews would depend on context, which essentially meant that there would be due process and it would depend on whether it was directed at an individual or if it was just said screaming at the wind. And Harvard was following longstanding precedent for certain kinds of speech that don't amount to harassment because there's no particular target. But nevertheless, Claudine Gay was roundly criticized, almost universal condemnation from within media. But here's the thing, Alan Garber sat right behind her. And I challenge anyone listening to this to go on YouTube, find the committee testimony, and you can see Alan Garber's head nodding in cadence with Claudine Gay's testimony. It's absurd for us to imagine that Alan Garber, who had been her boss for 11 of his 12 years of provost, as provost. Let me say that again. Alan Garber had been Claudine Gay's boss for 11 of his 12 years at provost. She was only his boss for roughly 6 weeks, from the beginning of the semester to October 7th. Alan Garber, who is an American Jew, identifies as such and has talked a lot about it since becoming president and in light of his leading here. My point is that whatever Harvard can be accused of with respect to leadership on DEI, he was provost when I was there doing the work that I described earlier. Claudine Gay was just a dean. He is complicit. He was part of it. And he has never once admitted that he is part of an effort to change that university. He is now being universally held as someone who is saving Harvard. So to come full circle, Alan Garber never wanted to be president. He's an accidental president. He did not have the individual leadership capacities to lead that institution through a period of controversy. He's a good person. I've been in his home. I've had dinner with him. I've had small debates with him. I know him pretty well. I was a professor there for almost a decade. But he has now found himself in a situation that he cannot escape from. He cannot admit that Harvard University's anti-Semitism problem is not as much of a crisis as he has consistently said it is. And that will ultimately mean that the Trump administration will always hold a guillotine over his head because of his own admissions.
I never thought about looking for Alan Garber on the congressional tapes. I'm going to go look at that now in the hearing. I mean, of course, he was the provost. Of course, he would be at that hearing that day probably. And so, but he was
the only other person from Harvard to sit within visible range of Claudine Gay, just over from a viewer standpoint, over her left shoulder.
It's mentioned in the Atlantic article. I didn't know he was there until I read it. When I read the Atlantic profile, which, to your point, absolutely portrays him as a potential savior of a bystander, a potential savior of Harvard.
The article describes him as a bystander.
That's right, and also as this sort of moderate voice versus, as you point out, the longstanding leader in all of those efforts. one thing that just, I understand it, and again, I don't, is that why people can't see this, that the Trump administration's anti-Semitism crowing. Not that there isn't anti-Semitism. Of course there is. Of course there is. And of course there can be very specific things done to try to eradicate that, or at least diminish that, in all of the forms of discrimination on college campuses. But why can't enough people see that that's just a Trojan horse for all of the racism and all of the eliminating and erasure of all history that isn't essentially heterosexual, white, and male? Why are people willing to forego all of that other progress and say, but they're going after anti-Semitism, so I have to be behind that? Like this, we've lost an ability to see the negative impact. We've lost the ability to see how we may get the thing we want the least by going after the thing we want. Do you
Andrea,
understand what I'm saying?
The question is hard to ask because the circumstances we find ourselves in are so difficult to actually understand. But let me try it by taking a gigantic step back. If we take ourselves out of the weeds of lawsuits and the technical language of people who have to argue the merits of either side of a lawsuit and remind ourselves how we got here, it's a simple problem we are facing. We elected a president in 2016 who led a birther movement, who mobilized masses of people and voters to essentially take back America from the black and brown people like Obama and his many followers in the rainbow coalition of voters who put him in office. So if we just move forward in time, what we see is a wholesale assault on all institutions where those black and brown people have made headway and have a measure of power in our society to change how we function as a democracy, including protections for the right to vote, protections for civil rights and civil liberties for previously excluded groups. The larger movement here that is unmistakable, undeniable, and is admitted by members of the administration, including the Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism, essentially argue that the anti-DEI movement is ultimately to protect white people in America from discrimination. They don't actually have evidence of this discrimination. There are no individual plaintiffs, by and large. I mean, there are a couple of lawsuits that were filed during the Biden administration, which I've actually written about. But these are just blanket arguments that America has been hijacked by immigrants and people from around the world who hate America.
And the LGBTQ community.
But sometimes even the LGBTQ community falls in this bucket of powerful people who enable and who are part of this kind of cabal of leftists. So it's a both and with regard to them. It's both their sexual identity and particularly for trans people, but it's also that you have a large population of white LGBTQ people who are of affluence and means. And if you can disable them, then they can't help the others who are less powerful. So Andrea, when I remind myself of that and we put this in context, then we do understand what is happening at Harvard and elsewhere. If you can get Harvard to fall, like Michael Roth has said, from Wesleyan, others will follow.
We only have a minute left or so, but we want to end on talking about how the Trump administration is using the FCC to crush DEI programs at T-Mobile, Verizon, and Paramount. These are all companies that have, are doing business in front of the FCC, trying to get their mergers or acquisitions blessed. I mean, how unprecedented is this, what they're doing?
Well, according to experts, it is completely unprecedented, which is to say that the FCC, when scrutinizing mergers and acquisitions for various communications companies, which is what was the case for Verizon, Paramount, focus on whether or not the merger will be harmful to consumers. To what extent will consumers benefit or be penalized by this deal? Here, they've used leverage in the way that the Trump administration seems to do with everything, tariffs, lawsuits against the media, big law to extort money for the purposes of doing its own bidding. In this case, Verizon had a $20 billion deal on the table, and the Trump administration said it's a no-go until you get rid of DEI. And Verizon said, well, we're in the business of making money, so we get rid of DEI. That's exactly what we're talking about. We are seeing the most naked form of governmental abuse, overreach, anti-constitutional norms, and ultimately the expressions of power that we've never seen from a government quite like this.
I want to go maybe a minute or two a little longer on your segment, just so to have you talk about the fact that this is the FCC doing this in much the same way as it could be Health and Human Services going after hospitals, or the Department of Education going after the university. Describe the impact of every single department and agency in the federal government being intentional and sort of very directed toward eliminating DEI. It's not that it's just one, is my point. So you wouldn't think of the FCC as doing this, right? You think, what does the FCC care about DEI stuff? Can you just explain how one follows with the whole, like this is a part of a whole plan?
That's right. Well, Project 2025 under the Heritage Foundation essentially cooked up the way in which the federal government could use its leverage over civil society to achieve its ends. And that's exactly what we're seeing play out. If you listen carefully to almost every news story that talks about a new executive order or a lawsuit directed at forms of civil society, the way that they are winning is they say, people on the other side who are receiving these lawsuits or these directives say, well, you know, we could do better. We could make our agency more efficient. We just didn't realize that the road to efficiency was to fire 80% of our staff, according to this executive order. My point is, conceding any argument to the Trump administration on the need for change or better or reform gives away the whole show. Mm-hmm. And that's the brilliance, and I'll say it again, that's the brilliance of the architects of this movement. They have everyone on their rhetorical hills admitting, like, well, of course we could save the government more money. Of course there's some form of Medicaid fraud out there. It's not 750,000 people or whatever the number is. I can't exactly remember. It might be 5% of the pool, but they're just going to get rid of, as many people as possible and then have them reapply. That is what we're seeing across the administration. And the last thing I'll just say, Andrea, to this point, Trump has shown us time and time again that his style of negotiation is to be as punitive and as extreme as possible when going after someone. Why? Because intimidation works. Fear works. And so we see this currently now happening in the media. The Wall Street Journal is the latest to receive a threat of a $10 billion lawsuit. I don't have that right? You guys are in the media. Is it $10 billion?
I don't know what the number is. But it's a huge number. It's a big lawsuit against the Journal.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So.
Thank you very much, Khalil. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And as I say to people all the time, none of it happens in a vacuum. No one thing is happening in a vacuum. It's all part of a plan in whole. So keep your eye on the ball.
Thank you. It's great to see you both, and happy summer as best we can make it.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Khalil Gibran Muhammad. He's professor of African American Studies and Public Affairs at Princeton University and a visiting professor at Harvard's Kennedy School. Coming up after this quick break, we'll open the lines to continue a conversation from earlier in the show about your social prescriptions for what ails you. More people are asking their doctors for legitimate prescriptions for social events instead of pharmaceutical fixes. We'll get your thoughts on staying social, connecting with friends, and being healthy. I'm Andrea Cabral. She's Shirley Leung. We're in for Jim and Margery. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, lawyers for Harvard are making their case against the Trump administration's funding cuts. And Jordan or LeBron, The ongoing greatest of all time debate continues, but Kevin Merida makes a strong case for Celtics giant Bill Russell and redefining greatness in sports. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, helping families overcome the college planning stress. Committed to providing trusted guidance with calculators, step-by-step videos, and more. Details at mefa.org.
Hi. We are in our last segment here, so welcome back.
3.
I know, welcome back to BPR on GBH. Am I on this? Am I on the right page now?
Yeah, we're on hour number 3.
We're streaming at youtube.com at GBH News. I'm Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung in for Jim Braude. She's former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral in for Margery Egan. Jim and Margery will be back tomorrow at the BPL. We're ending the show today by continuing a conversation we had a little earlier with Dr. KGB, Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, about social prescriptions. So some health professionals are taking a more holistic approach to treating patients. Rather than going straight for the pills and antidepressants, they're offering quote-unquote social prescriptions like community activities, exercise, art, music, exposure to nature. I think the story we were reading about was, a doctor prescribed us a 10-week cycle program, right, for one of his patients. And it's all said to improve mental and physical health. The lines are open. Why are we like this? We really need a doctor to tell us to go outside. I mean, Jim has how many doctors on retainer, and all he needed to do was go touch grass. And maybe that's where he is today. 877-301-8970. Call or text. Have you received a social prescription from your doctor, or are you already self-medicating with, I don't know, maybe an outing with old friends, book clubs, pickleball? Maybe you're going to a Coldplay concert. How are you staying connected, social these days, and how has it helped you feel healthier? Or maybe you've added a few glasses of wine to the daily agenda. Health be damned. Call or text 877-301-8970.
I think it's great. I hope it catches on because it's an additional form of engagement between someone, not that it has to come from a medical professional, but between a patient and a doctor. I mean, you hear, stories about some of the impersonality that happens between doctors and patients, particularly very busy doctors. They spend maybe 15 minutes with you, and and they're sort of focused on symptoms and diagnosis and cure. But the idea that your doctor would inquire about things that you like to do. I mean, most people are nervous and anxious every time they go to the doctor, even if it's for a routine physical. To engage somebody and have them relax and talk about things that, I haven't done that in a long time. My sister called me this past weekend. She's putting together like this it's like a multi-generational bike ride. It's really just the two generations, mine and her daughter's. But we're going to go on a bike ride. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I haven't ridden a bike and I don't even know how long. So we're going to do this family bike ride. And that's what a great thing.
That sounds great.
But until somebody sort of says it to you, you can get so caught up in the day-to-day. People are so busy. They have so many things on their mind. And you forget sometimes about how to enjoy yourself. I mean, keep in mind, we're the only country, other countries laugh at us about this, we're the only country on this globe that wrote the pursuit of happiness into their government, into their constitution. We actually had, as Americans, decided that we were going to have an expectation that we would not only pursue happiness, but achieve it, which is kind of amazing, right? We are way past forgetting what it means to really do that and to do what makes us happy. And so the idea that we would incorporate that into, as part of our regular physical health, I think is great.
Yeah, I mean, as Dr. KGB was telling us, I mean, it's not it's not like it's an organized prescription, right? And
Right.
a few doctors are pushing this idea, and when I think about, I like Jim have a lot of doctors, and I think about my best doctors are the ones who spend a lot of time in the appointment just talking and catching up and asking about my kids. And sometimes we talk of politics as well. And so, and they get to know you as a person. So it makes sense that they were also will give you social prescriptions as well. I mean, I think about, especially now, I think about if you think about what we've gone through in terms of health in the last 5 years, we went through this pandemic, this global pandemic, and that really created a new relationship to health and to our doctors, and now we're kind of in this next phase where we're all. I feel like the way I'm reacting to the second Trump administration is similar to the pandemic, where, I mean, though I'm glad that I felt like I was drinking a lot more during the pandemic, and this time now that we know a lot more about drinking and how it's not great for your health, I don't drink as much. I am doom scrolling more than I should be, but I am trying to get out more, take walks more, be with my kids more. We went to the Superman movie over the weekend just to get out of the house and do something different. I mean, of course, we could sit at home and watch Netflix and stream, a gajillion Marvel and DC comic movies, but we decided to just get out, go to the seaport, see a movie, just get out of our usual routines.
Well, our texters are weighing in. So Donna, who's on the road, said she joined friends of her local library, and she's going to run a crafting workshop, self-prescribed, which is great.
Oh, I love that.
I have a very, very close friend who does crafting with her cousin and some of her nieces, and they just come up with all of these. I'm not a crafter person.
Yeah. Wait. Can I ask a dumb question? What is crafting? What exactly is crafting?
You're essentially creating things, crafts, right? Mm-hmm. So she has made some of the most fabulous greeting cards.
Oh.
You take things that provide the texture on the front of a card or a particular picture. She goes to a lot of flea markets and yard sales,
right.
And you buy all of these little things and you create other things from them. And a lot of their crafts have, themes and so on and so forth. And that's some of the stuff that she does a lot, like Donna, finding out sort of, what makes you feel good and what makes you, and whose company you want to be in while you're doing that.
Yeah, building community is really important.
Building community. So we have somebody who says, my latest self-help thing, I joined Rock Voices, an adult choir, not requiring auditions, weekly rehearsals, meeting new people, learning new music between rehearsals, leading up to a show. I'm loving it. And she gives a website, www.rockvoices.com. That sounds fun.
That sounds great.
It does. I wish I could sing.
I can't sing.
I can't sing.
I don't think anybody would want me to join Rock Voices at all.
I could be rock listener.
Right, that's right.
I could be in the audience.
So it looks like let's take a call from Kaylee.
Hi, Kaylee.
Hi there. I have two quick things to say. So one, I am a mental health therapist working out of Lynn, Massachusetts. So I end up doing I've never heard the phrase social prescription, but I end up doing a lot of that really naturally. And I'll say two things about it. One, I think when you receive instruction from a trusted healthcare professional, it legitimizes the idea of it. We all know we need to go outside. We all know we need to get our steps in and all that stuff. But when you have somebody who you really trust, who has seen you through a lot of difficult situations, tell you how imperative this is, it really holds you more responsible for your own health care. And the other thing I'll say is that, crafting and rock voices and things like that. It's all amazing. But oftentimes what I'm doing, especially as a counselor out of a place like Lynn, Massachusetts, is I am also connecting people with important community action programs. We can really recently look at the ICE raids and ICE presence in Lynn, and we can recognize people are scared and they need people in their community to help them navigate how to manage this. So a lot of what I'm doing in social prescription is making sure I'm connecting people with things that help them feel empowered and safe in their communities as well.
Kaylee, thank you so much for that call. And I'm so glad that you made the point about how legitimizing it is to have a healthcare professional make that sort of inquiry. I mean, we had one apparently wretched texter who said, doctors are not responsible for organizing your social life. Give me a break. I mean, that person will likely stay miserable. But that's the point. The point is that when a medical professional sort of legitimizes it, if you've been thinking to yourself that there's so much going on and your kids need so much or your significant other needs so much, you don't deserve to pursue the things that make you happy. It can be very validating to have a medical professional ask you about it and say, yes, you should take the time for a little self-care. And you should, that is worthy. It's the same thing that happened around domestic violence. When doctors started saying, are you okay? Mm-hmm. And asking where bruises were coming from and leaving potential for people who are in a ladies' room to make a marking on a form saying, yes, I'm in trouble, I need help. That validated that the victim had the right to go after help, to seek help. That's why it makes sense to have doctors do it.
That's a great call, Kaylee. I mean, I love the fact that you are telling your patients, you're empowering your patients.
Yes.
Because I think part of the reason why people feel down or depressed or out of sorts is because they just feel like they have no power, they have no control. Everything is being done to them, and there is nothing they can do.
Right.
And they have to be reminded, yes, you have agency. There's a lot you can do.
Right.
You just have to do it. You just have to take that first step. And so I love that call. Thanks, Kaylee.
We have texters weighing in. One texter says, for my better mental and physical health, I am part of an affinity group. This is a group of friends and like-minded folks who are studying what is really happening in the country and working to figure out how we can resist the juggernaut of authoritarianism. This gives me hope and purpose. Yeah, I mean, you can actually even focus on the stuff that's making you crazy, making you want to walk out into traffic, but focus on it with like-minded people in a positive way, and then figure out how you can do something that makes you feel like you're fighting against it or making a positive contribution. That's a good one.
I mean, one of the things I've started this year, or maybe started last year, is I started, I've two young kids. I mean, maybe not so young anymore, but 12 and 14. They're a handful. And, I know some other working moms. And as busy as we are, we decided over the last year that we're going to get together for dinner like every quarter. Which is a big deal for us, because we might have never done. We probably never did this we never did this at all, and maybe we get together once a year. But now we're trying to get together 4 times a year, and it's a huge difference. It's just great to relax and go out to dinner, or maybe we'll go to someone's house on the weekend and just not think about the world.
Right. Let's talk to Dan in Somerville. Hi, Dan.
Hey guys, great conversation. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a therapist and I work a lot with people around these kinds of issues, around isolation, alienation. I've worked in addictions for a long time, throughout fentanyl and all of that stuff. And one of the key elements to a lot of the depths of despair that we see and sort of the isolation that people experience is that lack of human connection. And we're in this time where we find a lot of surrogates for connection through social media, through the internet, through feeling connected, but not actually being connected. And there's a difference there. We're all touch starved. We're intimacy starved. We're connection starved. The other day I was riding my bike on the bike path in Somerville, and I'm, watching people as I go. And I see all these people walking around staring at their phones as they're walking. And I'm thinking to myself, I even see people on their bikes looking at their phones. And I'm thinking to myself, like, these phones are like leashes, right? And like, you're out in the world, you're people all around you, and yet you're sucked into your device. And that's why we feel so lonely, is because the devices have taken away our own agency. And I think to the former caller who called in, that what she was talking about is absolutely true. It's about connecting with other people who share the same needs or the same interests that you might have, doing it through fun activities, and then also using that as a conduit to connect with important needs activities, right? And so all these things are really, really crucial to figuring out, like, how do we as humans reconnect with one another at a time when technology has supplanted our natural way of doing so.
Dan, is that message resonating, with your patients? I'm certainly not asking you to divulge any privileged information, but when you're confronted with someone who's feeling disconnected or lonely, and you sort of explain to them what you just explained to us, does that resonate with people, or is there some cognitive dissonance? Like, do they leave and get right back on their devices?
So I have a number of patients, especially men, I will say, that will come to me because they feel lonely. They identify that their devices preoccupy them. Sometimes it's even, the use of, beyond social media, even pornography, video games, these kinds of things, these hyper-stimulating activities. And they'll come and they know that they're feeling unwell. And someone just helping them to say it out loud, it almost like, it reminds them that, oh yeah, like it is this thing. It validates that. It affirms whatever they're feeling. And part of that is I have to build trust with my patient, right? They have to trust me in order for me to point out this thing that they're probably feeling really vulnerable and insecure about. But when you can do that, you see remarkable change because people start paying attention to how much screen time they're using. They pay attention to how much their devices get in the way of things. And they're able to start working, we're able to start working together to think, okay, what's a plan for like how to reduce that stuff? You don't have to just throw it in the trash and get away from it. Like, these devices are part of our society. We do need them to a degree, but how do we be more self-aware about our use of them? And then you get to see the progress and you reinforce that over time.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much for that call. I have a feeling that probably helped a bunch of people who were listening.
It did. I mean, that's striking that men, I was actually thinking men tend to be quite lonely. I mean, right? I mean, how many stories do you hear about men as they get older? I mean, their circle of friends shrinks, and if they do have friends, it's probably through their wives or their girlfriends. It's not, they're not continuing friendships that they formed. And then the one thing that Dan didn't mention was AI. I think a lot of men, a lot of people are going to be sucked into AI.
Thinking that ChatGPT is really like, a friend of yours, a chatbot is a real
right,
person.
Exactly. So yeah. I think
a few movies about that.
So I think we actually need to be intentional about our relationships with our devices and with technology, and each
other. To the texter who wrote in, crafting is making things by hand. Thank you very much. That's a far more succinct and on-point explanation than I was able to stumble through. So I appreciate that.
Let's try to get a call from Worcester. Janet from Worcester.
Hi, Janet.
Hi. First, thank you, ladies, for filling in for Jim and Margery. And it's a great show today. But and I so resonate what he just said because I am currently in active cancer and making decisions. And I do get out in nature, and I do read so much about healing food and changing my diet. And I appreciate like those things happening, like those things being looked at and helping people with that. But I am too, like, alone. I am isolated. I'm on Medicaid. I'm fearful that I might lose it with the active cancer. And I think, it's a fearful time overall. And connections have, human to human connections have been lost. And I'm one of those who are struggling with that. So everything he just said was so welcoming. And I'm thankful being in Massachusetts where, we have a more forward-thinking type of state. And all I can say is to anybody in active treatment, going through these hard times, especially on Medicaid, stand out in the sunshine, even if it's for 20 minutes. Just really get in some fresh air and use the sunshine for good. But again, I just thank you guys for this. This is a great topic.
So to say, I've heard of the support groups for people that are struggling with various types of health issues. Small groups of people that are just kind of getting together and sort of sharing their feelings with one another, but are also starting things like book clubs. They don't have to they don't necessarily meet completely regularly all the time, but sometimes an outing, going out for coffee. Do you have, any resources like that you think you might be able to look into? Or, and I know even if you go online, sometimes you can find support groups connected to hospitals or the places of treatment where you might be able to find something.
Yeah, no, those are excellent ideas. I need to do that.
It's hard to do it. I know you need to use it. Everybody does. I do the same thing. I know I need to do it, and then I don't do it. But I just want to encourage you, and I want to wish you well, because we appreciate your call. We appreciate the fact that you're a listener.
Janet, I had breast cancer about 8 years ago, and the year I had breast cancer, I met two other women who also had breast cancer. We were diagnosed within months of each other, and we still are connected today. We call each other our cancer buddies. We all had breast cancer. We all had the similar diagnosis, prognosis, similar treatments. So I hope you can find a cancer buddy, because I just found it, I don't know, it was great to just talk to someone who kind of knew exactly what you're going through. And it's a lot. It's a lot to go through cancer, to be diagnosed and be treated. The other thing I wanted to say was that, I don't know if you heard Dr. Barnett, but she was saying that for anybody on Medicaid in Massachusetts, know that there are a lot of efforts to the state to help people stay enrolled on Medicaid. People want to be, the state wants you to get your insurance. They want stay on your insurance. So ask your doctor, ask, I don't know where you're getting treatment, but there are efforts, desperate efforts to keep as many people on Medicaid as possible in Massachusetts.
Yeah, that was great, Shirley. And stay enrolled, Janet. Make sure that you stay on top of the rules. Community centers have information. Healthcare facilities have information. You can call any community center, and they'll be able to help you. Be well.
Oh, I think we have a special guest.
Oh, my goodness.
Back from vacation.
I have not seen
We were looking for you last Monday, and I was told, oh, no, he's on vacation. So where did you go? Can you say?
I went to, every summer I go to Montana, and I ride horses. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, that's so great.
Yeah. Horses. So do I.
I know.
It's really hard to come back.
I know you had
Was it
fun,
great? Okay, so did you completely tune out? Did not listen to the news?
Well, it was a little hard in this case, especially in this building because of NPR PBS.
That's right.
So no, we're all journalists, so I always keep tabs. Maybe not as deeply as I normally do, but it was great. And by the way, we had cool weather out there. It was great to be bundled
in
up.
Montana?
In Montana.
Oh,
we had
wow.
2 cool days of weather. It was fabulous.
It was so hot here.
I kept getting weather alerts.
Yeah.
It was very incongruous.
I miss you,
I
know. Well, welcome back.
Now he's too important, and now he's too busy.
Well, welcome back. Because we missed you last week. We were like, we were wondering where you are, and we were told, oh, he's on vacation. But and then I was looking through the notes today. Oh, will Jared show up today? And I was thinking, where's Jared?
No,
I'm so glad
here.
you're here.
Well, what did you guys do with the others? Where are they?
What others?
That's it.
It's not my turn to watch them. I don't know. I don't know where they are.
Whose turn is it to watch them?
I have no idea.
That means they're up to no good.
So what can we look forward to?
We are talking to William Jackson Harper, great actor. You might know him. His career really on The Good Place, and he's always balanced stage and screen, and so he's out at Williamstown right now doing Not About Nightingales, the Tennessee Williams play. So we'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to the Pulitzer Prize-winning writer, Richard Russo, who has a new book out called Life and Art. It's part memoir, part really, I think, him at this stage of life trying to figure out his life and make sense of it and looking back at family and his career. And then we'll talk about the Ming Fei exhibition at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which is basically a garden of delights. He's a Chinese artist who, when living in New York and working in New York for so long and being so removed from nature, created it. He created these huge, large-scale sculptures of pears and cherries and trees.
Wow.
And
I should take my kids to that. I think they would love it.
You
I think my
should,
kids would love
because
that.
it's really, really beautiful. And they've created this little pathway so that you walk through, meander through the exhibition, having these different encounters.
wow.
It's really, really lovely.
Oh, that's great. I love the Isabella Stewart Museum. I don't think I've been there in years, so this is a reminder. I need to go check it out. Part of my social prescription, right, to go to museums.
See, you got to start prescribing stuff. That Tennessee Williams play, I mean, the Globe had a great article about how Tennessee Williams over the decades has just defies description. That play's supposed to be great.
Yeah, I need to beeline it out to Williamstown and I think it's pretty hot too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you both.
All right.
Welcome back, cowboy.
Yahoo. Thanks for listening to another edition of BPR. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tune in tomorrow. Jim and Margery are back at the BPL. No tickets or RSVP is needed. They're going to speak to John King, NBC Sports Boston's Trenny Casey, host of GBH's newest show, The Garden Lady herself, CL Fornari, plus the Market Basket executives who were placed on leave, just like their beloved CEO, RDT. Our wonderful crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, Nicole Garcia, and Hannah Loss, with additional support from Nia Harmon. Patrick Lally ran our YouTube stream today. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Stay tuned to The Culture Show starting immediately after us on 89.7 GBH. I'm Andrea Cabral.
I'm Shirley Leung.
Have a lovely afternoon. We hope you can tune in tomorrow.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And M&M Skylights, offering the full range of Velux skylight products, installation, and maintenance services to customers from Boston to Portland and surrounding areas. More information at mmskylights.com. Almost 21. Samuel's every rite of passage is fraught with challenges and social barriers. Can a community of disability activists help him follow his dreams? Watch POV, The Ride Ahead, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at